What's good, y'all? Welcome back to the Playmakers Corner podcast. I'm your host for today, Simon Villanos, aka Coach V, and we had a pretty jam-packed weekend here. At the time I'm recording this, it is March 30th, Sunday. That's when I'm recording this intro. Obviously, the rest of this was recorded throughout the week with the recaps, and like I said, a whole bunch of games happened. Just got back from the airport here and recording a lot of these recaps. Had a great weekend in Kentucky, so we'll be talking about all those games, all the games in the NAIA, hopefully as many of the women's college flag football games that happened across NAIA and all the divisions here from March 24th to today, March 30th, or at least that week of here. We'll be talking about all those games. We'll talk about the Atlantic East Conference as well, recap all that action there, then go into Playmaker of the Week and our NAIA rankings here. So a lot to talk about. Let's just go ahead and hop into it here. All right, March 26th, Wednesday, we had a couple NAIA games here. We had number 11, William Woods versus number 18, Cottey. William Woods playing their first game without Joe Schlager. They are now going with Charlie Holloway as their new head coach, at least for this season, and I believe that was actually announced on Wednesday the 26th here. Obviously, he's been there for longer than just the day here, but he will take over for William Woods here going into this game, trying to continue their win streak. And, you know, they pretty much picked up where they left off here in the first drive. Cottey would start with it here, but I think it's Brussel, not Brussel. We'll see, though. I'm recording this on Wednesday 26th here. But she had 3 sacks on this drive alone here. And obviously, Cottey would end up punting from there. William Woods, they would take over with the 1st and 5 approaching midfield. But a couple drops here and incompletions would force a turnover on downs here. To their credit, though, I will say this. Mackenzie Hicks found Addie Schillick near the first down marker on a corner route, but she was maybe 2 or 3 yards short there, and it was just good defense by Cottey. Cottey would take over here after that with 5:20 left, but they would pretty much go 3 and out here, and then I believe Amaya Karula would be replaced at quarterback, which definitely makes things interesting here. So there you go there. And also, I'm looking at the stats now. This does not look correct, at least from the Cottey side of things, so I don't know what's going on there. But anyways, William Woods, they would go ahead and get the ball with 3:45 left, 1st and 6 approaching midfield here. On first down, Mackenzie Hicks, she gets sacked by Carla Martinez, so now it's 2nd and 11. But on 2nd down here, Hicks gets a snap, throws the wheel out down the left sideline, and Brussel gets the reception and is gone to the house to go ahead and make it 6-0. A big time play here that goes for about 40 yards, obviously a little bit more than 40 yards here. And then on the PAT, Hicks finds Olivia Perkins to make it 7-0 as they strike first. Now Cottey, with under 2 minutes left here, here is what happens on first down. Sorry, Karula is still at quarterback. It would be the next drive where she would be taken out, but she would find Markayla Mallard to make it 2nd and inches. Then there's a drop, and then on 3rd down, Karula would go ahead and get the 1st down to make it 1st and 18 on the keeper. And then this is the mistake that kind of got her benched pretty much for the rest of the game here. She takes a shot deep, and it's double covered, and Kennedy Van Noy comes up with the big time interception to set up William Woods with the 1st and 7 approaching midfield as they look to go up 2 scores here. So here we go, 1st down. It's a deflection by Laurencia Botts, bringing up 2nd, and on 2nd, Hicks finds Kennedy Van Noy up the seam, who gets a nice gain afterwards to make it 1st and 14 past midfield. 1st down here, though, Hicks scrambles left. She goes ahead and gets about 6. She then throws the slant right after that to Natalia Hernandez de Leon, who spins out of a pull and gets some nice yards after the catch here to put them in the red zone, 1st and 15 here. On this next play, Hicks gets snapped, spins away from the rusher, and scrambles for another 7. William Woods then go ahead and calls a timeout at 9:29 left here. By the way, in the second quarter, after the interception, that would end the first, so there you go there. But after the timeout, Hicks gets snapped, fading backwards, rifles one off her back foot to Maddie Jones, who makes the low catch over the middle to make it 13-0. And I believe that would be the first one of her career. Shout out Colorado and Mountain Vista there. On the PAT, it would be dropped, but William Woods with a 13-0 lead. Now, Cottey, they would go ahead and take over, and it looks like it was Asia Bishop Flores who took over. On the stat sheet, it says it was Renaya Griffin. I'm pretty sure that was not Renaya Griffin, so it was Bishop Flores, I believe. But she puts together a pretty solid drive here. At some point, they do get a 1st and 10 pass in midfield, and then here's what happens. She tries to take a shot down the right sideline, but it's Maddie Jones who goes step for step with the receiver, alone in 1-on-1, and knocks it away at the last second. That brings up 2nd down here, and on 2nd, Brussel applies some pressure here, eventually tracks her down with Van Noy to make it now 3rd and 7. Then on 3rd down here, Bishop Flores, she's sacked by Brussel for her 4th sack of the game and of the half to make it 4th and 15. And so here we go. Cottey, they're going to have to go for it here. They're already past midfield, so they might as well. And Bishop Flores goes deep down the right sideline, but Maddie Jones is there, and she goes ahead and makes sure the receiver has no room to get her feet in bounds. And the receiver does make a great catch, but she is ruled out of bounds, so that's a turnover on downs. And so William Woods, 1st and 5, approaching midfield. 2-minute warning just hit here. They do call a timeout at, I believe it is 1:56 left in the first to go ahead and talk this one over. And then out of the timeout, here's what happens. Hicks with the snap, buys time, rolling right, sidearms it to an open receiver for a first, but a penalty would go for an illegal forward pass, so that would move them back with a 2nd and 10. After a drop, though, on 2nd and 10, it's now 3rd and 10. Hicks gets snapped, goes back to Brussel on what looks like to be the same play, but this time Brussel catches it, and then she breaks it loose, and she goes to the house for another big time 40, I want to say at least 30-plus yard touchdown. You could get into all the specifics later to make it 19-0 with 1:26 left in the half here. Hicks would try to scramble for the PAT, but she would be short here. Now, Cottey, they would have 1:26 left here. Bishop Flores still at quarterback, and they would actually drive all the way into the red zone with the 1st and 18. They would call a timeout with 5 seconds left once they got into there, and there was some weird clock management. There was at one point where they let almost 30 seconds run off the clock before calling a timeout. So there was that. But 1st and 18, 5 seconds left. They're just going to take a shot here into the end zone. And this one's tipped up and intercepted by Maddie Jones to end the half. Her first career interception versus an NAIA team. I believe her first career one was actually against Pratt Community College, but obviously this would be big to go ahead and avoid Cottey from getting a score right before half. So there you go there. Now this game would just not be close after that. Cottey would kind of score here at the end. I felt like it was like halfway through the 4th, but they just ran out of time. And so William Woods, they continue their winning streak, and they win 19-6 here. Playmaker of the game, I think, has to be Ebony Brussel here, who had herself a day. Let's go ahead and look at the stats. 4 receptions, 111 yards, and 2 touchdowns for her. And then on defense, she was right behind the leader in tackles, which was Kennedy Van Noy with 7. Brussel had 6. She also had, it says 3 sacks here, but I'm pretty sure I counted 5 at the end of the half. So yeah, unless I'm just counting it wrong. But she's having a great season, her freshman year, by the way, so far, and she's going crazy. Looking at everyone else, Mackenzie Hicks with another great game, 22 of 33, 239 yards, 3 touchdowns here. Obviously, Brussel led in receptions. Kennedy Van Noy 4 for 50. Addie Schillick had 5 receptions for 37 yards here, and then Maddie Jones with 7 receptions for 20 yards and her first career touchdown. On defense for them, Kennedy Van Noy had herself another good game. 7 tackles, like I said, but also had an interception and 2 pass breakups over there. Olivia Perkins had a sack, as Sam Menard had a sack as well, as this William Woods team continues to roll. And the next time we'll see them will be in person, so I'll be recording after that. For Cottey here, I'm pretty sure it's Bishop Flores who got in at quarterback, not Renaya Griffin, but she went 6 of 17, 68 yards and a pick. Karula 3 of 10 for 30 and a pick here. So not really much going for them. Alina Jean-Baptiste, 5 receptions, 50 yards. It looks like Julali Botts had a 40-yard touchdown reception, so there you go there. Then on defense for Connie, Alina Jean-Baptiste, 8 tackles for them. Carla Martinez with the sack, and that would pretty much be it, as William Woods takes care of business against number 18 Cottey, 19-6. All right, now let's talk about number 13 Southwestern. They were hosting number 1 Ottawa here. Southwestern, a very young team, but trying to stay consistent here going into this game. 4-3. It kind of feels like they've been trading off losing a game, winning a game, and whatnot here. Or at least it did. Started the season with 2 losses, then had 3 wins in a row. Lost to William Woods, beat Bethel, and now they play Ottawa, which is a tough matchup. And then you have Ottawa, who's on like a 10-game winning streak going into this one. And you know what? I got to watch a lot of this game. This one was actually a little close in the first half. A little bit of a slow start for Ottawa. It was 12-0 at half, and then Ottawa began to pull away here. Had a big fourth quarter where they put up 15 points, and they would end up winning 34-0. This Southwestern offense just never quite got going for them, which is unfortunate, but not too bad with all things considered. For Ottawa, though, Madison Carrera, the MVP, well, former MVP, and I would say probably your front runner for MVP this year, 31 of 40, 261 yards, 3 touchdowns, only 1 pick. Also had a rushing touchdown as your obvious playmaker of the game here. Very patient, stuck with it throughout this game, so there you go there. And then her lead receiver was Jasmine Camacho, 9 receptions, 108 yards, and a touchdown. Marley Spielberg really ate in this game, 13 receptions for 88 yards and 2 touchdowns. Tatiana Dos Santos had these stats can't be right. It says 1 receptions for 50 yards with a long of 35, so I don't know what's going on there. And then Alyssa Linkus, 3 for 15. On defense for Ottawa, they continue to dominate. They had 2 players co-leading in tackles. It was Leilani Kamal and then Talia McGinnis with 6 each. McGinnis did have a TFL here, though. Cynthia Holmes, 2 interceptions in this game. And then you had DJ Paris with a sack and Sue Kaufman with a sack as they dominated. For Southwestern here, Kennedy Hayes, a rough go, 11 of 25, 56 yards, 2 picks, also had 25 rushing yards, but just not a lot of offense really going here. They're just too young at this point. They will get better, but they really struggle to get things going. Viviana Solis led with 2 receptions for 31 yards. Sharifa Piamonte, 2 for 17. Then Olivia Manfrey, only 1 reception for 13 yards. On defense, Solis led with 9 tackles here. You had Tegan Smith with 6, and then Andrea Moon with 5. And then it looks like Olivia Manfrey did get an interception, which is nice for her. But like I said, offense really struggled here. Defensively, not too bad. Held them to 12 at halftime and no points in the first quarter. So there you go there. But just could not quite get it done here as Ottawa extends their win streak to 11. They will be playing Midland on Sunday here, so that'll be interesting in Ottawa again. So there you go, as they are approaching the end of their schedule here, actually, now that I'm looking at it. Midland will be their 4th to last game. On the other hand, you have Southwestern, who is now at 500, continuing their trend of winning in 1 and losing 1 here as they lose to Ottawa. They go ahead and they play St. Mary on the 29th, Saturday here for a senior night. Should be an interesting game, but potentially another game where they can win again and continue to try to work to 500, and that'll obviously be their fourth to last game as well. So there you go there. Number 1 Ottawa continues their win streak 34-0. All right, now let's go ahead and talk about number 17 Graceland hosting number 12 Midland here. An interesting development. So Caitlin Shannon, who was listed as an assistant coach, now they're starting quarterback. But the interesting thing is it looks like she's also still calling the defense. So that is making up for a very interesting situation over at Graceland. And then you got Midland here who, they're just trying to stack wins at this point. A little bit of inconsistent play, from the quarterback position. So there you go. But they just played Kansas Wesleyan the week before, pretty close, and lost just barely 14-15, looking to bounce back in this one. And bounce back they did here, as Angel Ioane Kyle was on top of it with a big-time first half where they put up 27 points and went up 27-6, and that would pretty much be game from there. Midland would beat Graceland 33-12, and I think the playmaker of the game is obvious. It's Angel Ioane Kyle, who was on top of it this game. 30 for 38, 306 yards, 5 touchdowns, and a pick. Also had 33 rushing yards there as well. Like I said, big time game from her. As far as receiving goes, Olivia Dominguez Millsap, 9 receptions, 97 yards, and the hat trick, 3 touchdowns. Elia Livingston, 8 receptions, 68 yards, and a receiving touchdown. Jocelyn Lopez, 2 for 52, and a touchdown. And then you had Emily Farron right behind her, 3 for 34. On defense for Midland, Morgan Kalasek led with 7 tackles here. And I believe, I don't know. I don't know why. I see it now. And it was Malaysia Upino Tueo, I want to say, who had an interception in this game. For Graceland, started out well. I was watching the beginning of this game here. Their first drive, they got a touchdown, a very methodical touchdown put together, and then after that, they just did not have anything. For this Midland pass rush here, they're trying dump offs and short passes here, but Midland did a good job coming up and shutting that down real quick here, so shout out their defense. But let's talk about Graceland's offense here. Caitlin Shannon, 19 of 29, 93 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Did also have 103 rushing yards on 12 attempts. So there you go. Shyla Barrios, the former quarterback, only had 2 pass attempts and won 1 of 2 for 0 yards. She did have 2 rush attempts for 11 yards and a touchdown, and then 5 receptions for 13 yards. Kind of looking like they're trying to use her as more of a utility so that they could have more weapons out there, but just not quite working out just yet. And then you had Makia, I want to say Verdum, was their lead receiver with 5 receptions for 45 yards. Grace Jensen right behind her, also with 5 receptions, but for 26 yards. And then you had Barrios there. Delaney Mondino, she had only 1 reception in this game, which went for a touchdown. So there you go there. On defense, though, Shyla Barrios led with 7.5 or 7 tackles here. So that's nice for her. And then Grace Jensen had an interception. But that's pretty much it. As Graceland, it looked close at first, but they just could not quite get back on track here as their 2-game winning streak snaps here with this loss. And actually, they haven't beaten, I guess it hasn't been that long. It's only been like a week since they've beaten an NAIA team, but they played a lot of games since then. They beat Cottey last week, 19-8, then lost to Siena Heights. So there you go. And then they lost to Midland here. Their next game will be on Saturday against Kansas Wesleyan, which is not an easier game. So that's definitely tough for them. On the other hand, you have Midland here. This is a good win for them to get back in the winning column as they are now back at 500. But they get to face Ottawa on Sunday. So we'll see how that goes here, as the last time they played Ottawa was almost a month ago, and back in February, where they lost kind of by a lot. So we'll see if they could go ahead and carry over some of that success and consistency they had on offense. But final score of this one, Midland with a big win here, 33-12 over Graceland. Moving on, we have number 6 Baker versus number 20 St. Mary. Tried to watch this one, but the stream was not working. Doesn't matter, as Baker, they go ahead and take care of St. Mary's 40-13. 13 here. Looking at the stats, Tara Lorente, 24-37, 208 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. Also had 51 rushing yards and 2 more touchdowns. Another obvious playmaker of the game here, as she had 4 total. You also had Siena Waller, who went 2 of 2 for 22 yards and a passing touchdown here. Also 6 receptions for 18 yards. 6 rushes for 18 yards, and then 2 receptions for 15 yards. The lead receiver was Mahogany Simmons, 7 for 71, who's having a great season, by the way. Jalen Harris also contributed 7 receptions for 51 yards and a touchdown, and then Kaylee Phillips, another great player, who honestly should be on the breakout list here, which we're going to add her, had 3 receptions for 46 yards and a touchdown. Also 2 rushes for 27 yards and a touchdown there. On defense for Baker, it looks like Destiny Martinez led with 7 tackles, 2 TFLs here, and then I don't see any sacks or interceptions, but still a great game by Baker overall. For St. Mary's, the struggles kind of continue here. Not kind of, they definitely continue. Just looking at the box score here, Ariana Rivera got the start over NAIA Hooks. Like I said, could not watch the stream, so that sucks. I don't know who's actually out there, but the freshman went 10 of 18, 88 yards, and now that I'm looking at it, I'm pretty sure, I mean, I don't know. It could be right, but Noah NAIA Hooks is definitely interesting. Braylee Chris went 3 of 4 for 40 yards. Trinity Scott 1 of 2 for 31. Scott 7 rushes for 38 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. London Reed had a rushing touchdown as well. Talia Wright led with 4 receptions for 60 yards. Braylee Chris 3 for 40 there. On defense for them, Talia Wright had an interception, and then Demi Hilton led with 10 tackles. And then I don't see any sacks here, so there you go. But a very tough go for St. Mary, who loses to Baker 40-13 here. 40-13 is what they lost by, and they have they're not on a losing streak, but they have an NAIA losing streak, as they have not beaten one yet. They've beat Heston, they've beat Pratt, but haven't beaten any NAIA team. That might change against Southwestern this Saturday, but Southwestern is also looking to bounce back here, so we'll see what happens for them as they enter the back end of their schedule. But for now, Baker goes ahead and takes care of business 40-13. Continuing on, we had number 8 Kansas Wesleyan. They would face off with number 21 Bethel, and it went probably how you expected it to go. K-Dub takes care of business 57-0. Just some quick stats here. Shiro Awada, 10 of 11, 125 yards, 5 touchdowns. Soraya Tafua got in there and went 6 of 8 for 60 yards and 3 touchdowns. Jasmine Whitfield, 3 receptions, 34 yards, 3 touchdowns. Ava Durr, 2 for 26 and a touchdown. And then Janice Washington, Aaliyah Wood, Tafua, and Nigel Green each had a receiving touchdown. And then lead receiver, Addie Cadwell, 3 receptions for 57 yards. On defense for them, Anzion Robano, 4 tackles. Angel Roman with 2 and a sack. And then you had Alexa Mansur, who had a good game, 2 tackles, an interception here. Nigel Green with a sack, and Kylie Douglas with a sack. For Bethel, struggles continue. Amber Clausen, 1 of 11 for 9 yards and a pick. And then it looks like they ran the ball quite a bit here, so there's that. And then a couple players were co-leading here, 4 to be exact. In tackles, Catherine Schmidt, Gabriella Stone, Lydia Harper, Amber Clausen, each with 2. So there you go, Kansas Wesleyan takes care of business. All right, moving on to Thursday, March 27th here. We had a handful of games, NAIA games from the state, starting with number 3 Keiser versus number 16 Point, and this one was just not close. Keiser wins 65-0 here. Haley Young, 20 of 23, 235 yards, 5 touchdowns. Valentina Finetti got in there for a good amount, 14 of 16, 125 yards and 4 touchdowns. As far as receiving goes, Ashley Clam with 1 big 79 receiving touchdown, and that would lead the team in receiving yards there. You also had Chloe Griffin with 5 receptions for 60 yards. Sophia Caprio, 7 for 58 and 2 touchdowns. touchdowns. And then Janasia Wilson, the freshman, 9 receptions for 46 yards and 4 touchdowns. Brennan Ramirez also had a touchdown, and then Olivia Rijo, I think that's how you say it, also had a receiving touchdown. On defense for them, Adriana Cavalotti led with 7 tackles, and then you had Kennedy Foster with 2 picks, Maya Bryant with a pick, and Hannah Jays with an interception. 4 points here. Couple different players playing quarterback, or at least throwing the ball. Kariah Williams, 18 of 29, 87 yards. Christian Wright, 4 of 12, 48 yards and 2 picks. Amara Davia, 2 for 4 and 10 yards and an interception there. Receiving leader was Leah Prather, 5 receptions, 48 yards, followed by Anaya Robinson with 5 for 35, and Maddie Motts, 3 for 20. On defense for them, Kenzie Fillion led with 6 tackles, 2 pass breakups here. And then you also had Shanira Shahid with 2 sacks for them. But Point could not stop Keiser, as Keiser wins 65-0. Going on to another Thursday game here, we had number 7 Weber versus number 19 Reinhardt. And this was another game that just wasn't super close. Weber takes care of business 39-6. Some stats from the day. Sam Wilson with the day, 28 of 39 for 356 yards, 5 touchdowns, no picks. Also 46 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. Obvious playmaker of the game right there, I would say. Lead receiver was Cheyenne Duran, 8 receptions, 99 yards. Edwards, I think it's Igiana Edwards, had 3 receptions for 89 yards and a receiving touchdown. One of her better games up to this point here. Kalia Gator, 5 receptions for 67 yards and a touchdown. And Caitlin Signity, 4 for 29 and a touchdown. And then Bria Cam also had 5 receptions for 20 yards and 2 touchdowns. On defense, Ziona Shingles led with 8 tackles and an interception, the freshman standout. Edwards right behind her with 6. And then Emily Cruz, Cheyenne Duran each had an interception. And Caitlin Sigmundy with another 2 interceptions, adding on to that total, as she is having a great year, helping Weber defeat Reinhardt. Like I said, 39-6. For Reinhardt here, it looks like Isabella DePiece kind of solidified her spot as the starting quarterback, but really struggled in this game. 25 of 45, 238 yards, 1 touchdown to 5 picks. Did have 70 rushing yards, though. As far as receiving goes, Janiyah Thomas, 9 receptions, 127 yards, and a touchdown. And then Nicole Arus had 10 receptions for 64 yards. And then I think Victoria Salmon was the only one with over 1 reception. So there you go there. Ebony Cooper she led with 10 tackles here. And then it looks like Michaela Cooper had a sack and the no interceptions from the squad. As like I said, Weber takes care of Reinhardt 39-6. But definitely some things that Reinhardt is taking away from that game. All right, now next we're going to talk about Milligan. They would actually be at the Flag Football Frenzy in Kentucky the next day here, but they played one game over at Emmanuel, or at least, sorry, it was not Emmanuel. They played it in Tennessee, and then it was against Emmanuel there, so just making that clear. And this one wasn't super close. The first matchup wasn't really close either, but they would end up winning 42-12 here. Bridget Keiser threw 5 touchdowns in this one, spreading the ball out pretty well to Sam Urso, Sarah Rancorn, Caitlin Quinn here, just to name a few. But this offense was rolling, and it kind of showed when they came into Kentucky, rolling and grooving there. So there you go there. Campbellsville with a big win, 42-12, before playing 4 more games later this weekend here. Also, this is a quick backtrack back to Wednesday the 26th. Florida Gateway would actually play Daytona State, a little bit of a rivalry here. Unfortunately, I could not get access to the stream, or Daytona State stream, I should say. And, I mean, it didn't matter. Florida Gateway, they beat them 35-0. Florida Gateway now sitting at a pretty solid 6-2 here after another dominant win, their 3rd one in a row. All right, now back to Thursday. We had a really big game between number 2 Thomas versus number 4 St. Thomas here. I believe this was in, if I'm not mistaken, should have been in Thomasville here. And actually, this happened on March 28th, Friday. And, it was not a very, I should say, eventful game. It was exciting for sure, but not very eventful here. What would happen is that on the second drive here, at least, yeah, I believe it was the second drive, for St. Thomas, Janae Scott of Thomas got a sack here, which ended up being a safety. It looks like at the 2:06 mark here. And that would end up being the only score of this game, which ended up being a defensive battle here. And it was an interesting game. So Keelan Coleman for Thomas did start the game, but it does look like that she was subbed out here near the end of the second quarter here. Now Alexa Wilson took over. Now, there were still some struggles. I mean, in the third quarter, Thomas had 2 interceptions, and then St. Thomas was not able to score on either of those interceptions. And actually, if I'm looking at this correctly, they had 1 interception, in that third quarter, and then another one here in the fourth quarter. But like I said, St. Thomas not being able to capitalize on either of those. Thomas having some solid drives at the very least to keep the clock rolling and moving that ball here as they defeat St. Thomas 2-0. So very interesting game, a defensive battle, which I mean is not crazy. I think that's something you could definitely expect out of either of those teams, but very close margins. Now, looking at the box score here, let's start with Thomas. Alexa Wilson, 8 of 12, 146 yards, did throw that interception here in the fourth that gave St. Thomas an opportunity, which is rough. Keelan Coleman, 13 of 17, 68 yards before she was taken out. And then Holly Neer threw 1 pass, but that was intercepted in the third. Luckily, they weren't able to do too much with that. Alexa Wilson led with 19 rushing yards, and then Kiara Knight and Kiana Cole each had 54 receiving yards on 2 receptions as well. Zoe Jackson, 5 for 38, and then Destiny Lockett, 4 for 34. On defense for them, they were active. Diva Jones and Janae Scott led with 7 tackles each here. Janae Scott with that sack that would end up winning the game, and then Diva Jones had a 43-yard interception that unfortunately they were unable to score on. So there you go. And then for St. Thomas here, Brooke Bogatz, not even that bad of a game, 22 of 30, 129 yards and an interception. So not a lot of, I would say not a lot of turnovers, but definitely more missed opportunities even without the turnovers. Cameron Campbell led with 3 receptions for 34 yards, and then Rihanna Baker 5 for 33. Leah Cruz with 5 receptions for 19 yards there. For St. Thomas on defense, though, Rihanna Baker also had 9 tackles and 2 interceptions. Just very unfortunate that they were not able to get more out of that. So there you go there. And then Dominique Perez-Moore had another 8 tackles there. Lanai Leone with a big sack, but like I said, not able to do too much. So close game here. Thomas wins 2-0 over St. Thomas. Janae Scott, obviously playmaker of the game, getting that safety very early on here. But that does make the next matchup between these two very, very interesting. So there you go. Thomas, they stay undefeated currently here, having a pretty good, I would say a pretty good season. This will be their 9th win in a row, at least if I'm counting that right. That would be their 9th win in a row. For St. Thomas, they're also still having a pretty good season. That game would unfortunately give them their 2nd loss of the year here. And just looking at this, their other loss was to Keiser, which was not close, 7-34. But, if you remember, Thomas did beat Keiser, so it's interesting how those things go. So that's that there. St. Thomas plays one more game on March 29th against Point, though. Still having a good season as they are now sitting at 9-1. All right, now let's go ahead and talk about Point versus Florida Memorial here from March 28th. Going into this game, Point sitting at 16, Florida Memorial sitting at 22 here. And, this, unfortunately, it was not a game that we could watch in real time, but I wish I did, as FMU got out to a really strong start here, up 19-7 at halftime here, and then Point would kind of make a attempt to come back here, but would fall short as FMU beats them 25-20 here. If I am not mistaken, I believe this is also FMU's first NAIA win of the year here. Let me just double check that though. I could be wrong. Yes, it is, I believe, their first one of the year. So that's definitely big time for them. And it's improvement for sure. You know, you want to be able to see them to win a game, right, against an NAIA opponent. And so that's a good one to win. Almost blew it. We'll say that, but they did end up winning it. Let's go ahead and look at the stats here. Starting with FMU, Josiah Christie getting the start at quarterback, 13 of 28, 189 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a rushing touchdown. As far as receiving goes, it looks like Kelsey, or I'm pretty sure it's Kelsey Williams, had 5 receptions for 103 yards. Vanessa Queen had a receiving touchdown. Kamisha Moore had a receiving touchdown. Mariah Brooks, 5 receptions for 55 yards. They did have 3 interceptions from Naya Brim, Vanessa Queen, and Amiria Smith here. Vanessa Queen having a pick 6, by the way, a 35-yard pick 6. And then on defense here, Queen would also lead with 6, technically 6.5 tackles here is what they granted her, and then Jada Grant had 6 as well. So there you go there. A nice effort by FMU to go ahead and get them ahead. 4 points here. The struggle was continued. They tried to fight their way back into this one, but just a little bit too big of a hole that they dug in the first half. Kariah Williams, 13 of 18, 102 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. And then Christian Wright, 10 of 12 for 81 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. Right, also had 34 rushing yards. On, well, I guess as far as receivers go, Maddie Motts led with receiving here. In pretty much every receiving category, I should say. 6 receptions, 93 yards, and a touchdown. Nia Robinson right behind her, 4 for 45 and a touchdown. Kenzie Fillion, 7 receptions. So Maddie Motts actually had the second most receptions. And then Fillion also had 30 yards. And then to Siena Poole, 4 for 29 and a touchdown. On defense for them, Lainey Grace Benefield led with 4 tackles. And then Shanira Shahid, 1 sack in this game. And then no picks, 4 points. But very unfortunate. I mean, FMU, they jumped out to a pretty big lead here. Actually, at one point, they're up 25-7 in the third, and this one was pretty much over. And then, you know, Point would score a couple of touchdowns to make it close, but would just be a little bit too short here as FMU gets their first NAIA win of the season, their first one in just about a year here at least, 25-20 over Point.
In our next one, we have Warner, who beat Reinhardt 57-0. Trinity Kieran caught the first touchdown in this one, and then Catherine Hutchinson and Destiny Whitmore connected on the next one, followed by Hutchinson, who found Jessica Finley on the next 2 touchdowns to go up 4 scores. Your playmaker of the game in this one will be Catherine Hutchinson in this 57-0 win over Reinhardt.
All right, now let's go ahead and talk about some of the games here from the Flag Football Frenzy that took place over in Campbellsville. Shout out Campbellsville, Coach Kidwell, Coach Mack. Appreciate all of their hospitality down there. They hooked us up and got us right so that we were able to go and cover a lot of these great games here. And so we're really excited to talk about it. But let's start with this first one here. We had number 15 Siena Heights facing off with number 10 Milligan here. Milligan coming off of a win the day before in Tennessee. So this one would definitely be an interesting one here. Siena Heights, a first-year program. So let's go ahead and get into it. Milligan starts with the football here. Bridget Keiser in at quarterback. She goes ahead and gets the party started, rolling right, finding Krista Quinn on the corner route for a 1st and 10 approaching midfield. After a drop here, Keiser rolls left, finds Quinn again on the drag. That gives them a first down past midfield, a 1st and 5 actually. Krista Quinn got a lot on that catch. Then following that, Keiser finds Sarah Rancorn on the drag to make it a quick 6-0 with 10:19 left. Milligan would then go for 2, but this one would be unfortunately dropped. Siena Heights would go ahead and get the ball here with 10-19 here. Keiser done playing a lot of quarterback for them and just being a great overall athlete. She got the direct snap and finds a standout here in Kiki Mercado after a lot of time for a big gain past midfield of 1st and 10. Mind you, that was on the first play of this drive here, so 20 plus yards on that one. Following that, done on the snap, scrambles left for a first down in the red zone of 1st and 20. They then get the ball to Dunn again. She goes right up the middle for 5. And then it's Sophia Panico. She is the other quarterback for them. She got the snap. Tries to loft one deep here. But it is unfortunately just, there's too much air on this one. And Sarah Rancorn high points this one for an easy interception. So here we go. Milligan with a 1st and 1, 7-17 here. They go ahead and toss it left to Ashton Weirley. That gives them a first down, 1st and 15. Following that, Keiser scrambles for 5 and then throws a quick curl here to, I believe it's Caitlin Quinn, that goes for 6. So now it's 3rd and 4. After an overthrow, it's 4th down. They're obviously going to go for it. Keiser goes back to Quinn left here. That makes it for a first down, a 1st and 15 past midfield. They then go ahead and run a little bit of play action here where Keiser finds a wide open Sarah Rancorn to make it 12-0. PAT to Ashton Weirley is complete. That makes it 13-0. Now, 3:37 left for Siena Heights here. Dunn checks it down to Panico. That goes for maybe 3 yards. And then Tatiana Buno had a big sack here to make it 3rd and 5. And then Sakia Newell jumps the route here on the next play for a pick 6. Just an ill-advised pass here to make it 19-0. PAT is no good as Milligan is beginning to run away with this one, and actually they would not look back here. Milligan would end up winning this one pretty big here. I mean, they went up 19-0. At that point, it was pretty much over. They would end up beating Siena Heights 38-6. The only score for Siena Heights would come off of a very short Jordan Bailey rushing touchdown. Following that pick 6 here, they would be able to put together a pretty solid drive led by Kiyomura Dunn here, and that would get them on the board. But Milligan would just dominate after that. I mean, at halftime, it was 25-6. If I did my math right, I'm pretty sure it was 25-6 there. So Milligan defeats Siena Heights here. Final score of that one would be 38-6. Playmaker of the game absolutely had to be Sarah Rancorn. She dominated this game and took over, but this Milligan team looked very strong to start these set of games here this weekend, as they do have 3 more for Siena Heights. I mean, their inexperience just showed. I mean, it's unfortunate. They're a very young team here, so it feels like it's asking for a lot to expect them to beat a team like Milligan, who's not only hot, but is very experienced right now. So there you go. Final score. Milligan beats Siena Heights 38-6. All right, now moving on, we have the host team, number 14, Campbellsville, playing number 11, William and Woods here. So, William Woods with a new head coach just got a win over Cottey a couple of days ago. Campbellsville looking to get it going after a little bit of a break here. And so, let's go ahead and get into it. I will say this first half was pretty quiet. I mean, both teams were able to put, I want to say, red zone trips. Each had 2 red zone trips here, but nothing was able to come out of that here. Really good defense, I should say, by both teams here. So 0-0 after half. So let's go ahead and go into the third quarter where things kind of pick up just a little bit. So William Woods would start with the ball here. They would initially get a first down thanks to a nice throw from Mackenzie Hicks to Kennedy Van Noy to make it 1st and 12. But this drive would eventually stall out thanks to some drops here and overthrows and dangerous throws as well. Presley Payne was picking one off at, I think, in their 3rd down play here. So Campbellsville, they would go ahead and get it with 8:58 left here in the third. 1st and 8. Corrine Talkington the freshman in at quarterback. She would throw it, but this one would just be underthrown here, an out route underthrown and just slightly mistimed and picked off by Natalia Hernandez de Leon. So that's a big time interception to get William Woods here, and she almost returned it, by the way, but that would put them in the red zone of 1st and 7 with 7:34 left here. So after a throwaway on 1st down, 2nd down here, Hicks throws it, and it looks like a sack, but they'll call it a throwaway here. So no, 2 throwaways in a row and no sack here. So that brings up 3rd down, and on 3rd down here, Hicks gets a snap, looking left, throws a dot to the corner to Natalia Hernandez de Leon, who makes the catch here to make it 6-0. And then on the PAT, Hicks throws it to Addie Schillick, who makes a very casual one-handed catch, a great catch at that, to make it 7-0. Now Campbellsville, they would go ahead and get the ball with 4:45 left. Not out of reach this game is yet, but they would go ahead and start with a 1st down here, which would happen on 3rd down with a direct snap to Presley Payne, who would give them a 1st down. But on 1st and 19, Talkington with the snap gets sacked by Yvonne Brussel here to make it 2nd and 24. She then throws the out route to Annalise Beecher, but she kind of bobbles this one. She does bring in the catch, but that does cost her a couple yards as she only gets 5 there. And then on 3rd and 19, Talkington delivers a great ball over the middle, but this one is dropped here. So after a 1st down, Campbellsville is forced to punt, and that's where we pick up here in the 4th quarter. William Woods with a 1st and 4 here in that 1st quadrant here. Kind of backed up, though, against their own end zone. So 1st down, it's incomplete. On 2nd down, this pass is almost picked off here by J.C. Harper, but it would end up just being incomplete here, so that's unfortunate. And then on, I believe this is 2nd down here, 3rd down, they would go ahead and check it down to Addie Schillick, who would make a lot happen after the catch to make it 1st and 15 approaching midfield. They would then pitch it to Maddie Jones, who goes ahead and gets 5 here. Then on 3rd down, that forces it, or the Campbellsville, is able to force an incompletion thanks to J.C. Harper. So now that brings up 3rd down here. And on 3rd, Hicks sidearms it to Schillick on the drag, but she is stopped short of the 1st down, and so they will punt it. Campbellsville, they go ahead and they have 6 minutes here, and they have an electric punt return. They will pitch it a couple of times into the hands of Presley Payne, who almost returns it to the house here, but is stopped just short. Either way, Presley Payne completely flips the field, or flips it compared to what it would have been, and so they actually start in the red zone, 1st and 14. A great return by Presley Payne. It also gives Campbellsville a chance here. After an incompletion on 1st down, on 2nd down here, Talkington evades the rush and slips here, which would be considered a sack usually, but there is a penalty thrown, and so Campbellsville will get another chance here of 1st and 8. And on 1st down, Talkington, aiming for the right corner, throws it, but it is just off the mark, maybe a step too far. So now it's 2nd down here, but on 2nd down, Yvonne Brussel with a big time sack here, but a penalty would go against William and Woods. So now it is 2nd and 4. And on 2nd down, Talkington with the speed option pitches it to Presley Payne, who puts them up 7-6 with 1:47 left here. That's a big gain that they needed. But then an unsportsmanlike penalty would be called on William Woods here against the coaching staff. So that will make this next PAT half the distance. I assume Campbellsville went for 2 here, because a 1-point or a 2-point conversion would basically be from where the 1-point conversion would be. And so they go for it. It is a direct snap to Payne, who tries to spin out of a tackle, but there is a player in front of her. And unfortunately for her, Yvonne Brussel was there, who's having a great game, and she gets the clutch stop here to keep William Woods in the lead 7-6. Now William Woods, they would have 1:47 left here, but they would basically run out the clock and win this one in a thriller, 7-6. I will say this is something to note here. I do think there is a little bit of a mishandling of the play clock and the game clock here. So Campbellsville, they would call their timeouts at the end, And at one point, they called all their timeouts, but it was like third down. Or sorry, I should say it was fourth down. 58 seconds left. Play clock usually is around 40-ish seconds, I would say. And they just started it at the wrong time. They started the play clock at the wrong time. And so almost 15 seconds, just about 15 seconds ran off the game clock. So not the play clock, but the game clock here before they started the play clock. And this is a big deal because Campbellsville would have had a shot. William Woods would have had to call a timeout, and then they would have had to either run around and take a knee, but they can't do that for 15 seconds, or punt it, right? And either way, that would have given Campbellsville a chance to either, get the punt here, return it, maybe even return it to the house, considering you have a dangerous player like Presley Payne who could do that, or you try to run around. You eventually get them, let's just say, with at least 5 or 6 seconds left here, and it's a turnover on downs. Campbellsville gets 1 or 2 shots into the end zone on the other side of the field, and it would be a short field at that. So a very tough situation there, but this was a close game. Both teams had opportunities to win/lose it here, but William Woods just barely gets by 7-6 here. Playmaker of the game, Natalia Hernandez de Leon. Make sure you check our social media at Playmaker's Corner for our post-game interview with her. I would be plugging that audio in here, but I do not want to get copyrighted on YouTube. I'm just going to say that right now because there was some background music there. So it is what it is, but hopefully we'll be posting those interviews separately on YouTube, and we'll see how that goes. But a great interview with her here as she got that big interception to put them in a position to win it, or at least take the lead here. And that's what would happen here, and she would be the one to take the lead with that nice catch. A great throw by Mackenzie Hicks, but a good catch here to go ahead and put them up. And then Addie Schillick actually getting that 1-point conversion on the one-handed catch. Crazy, by the way, but a great play that would end up winning them the game too. And then Yvonne Russo also had a good game, some big defensive plays for Campbellsville. They had some opportunities. Unfortunately, some drops here would really hurt them. And then, like I said, the mishandling, it wasn't the team's fault, but the mishandling from the refs of the play clock and the game clock would have given them maybe, a slim opportunity at the end, but still an opportunity. Either way, though, tough loss for them. A solid win for William Woods, as William Woods wins 7-6. All right, now this next recap will be super quick. It happened between D3 Rockford versus Howard Community College. Howard, one of the latest, I would say the latest junior college to go ahead and join the ranks here of flag football. This would actually be their first game. So kind of tough though, as Rockford, they played a number of games before this against Benedictine, Bryan and Stratton, JUCO, Siena Heights, and NAIA, Graceland, and NAIA. So 4 games before this one, and Rockford is obviously a first-year program there. And then they played Howard, and this one just wasn't really close from the get-go. They would win big, 31-6 for this game. I kind of just wanted to, or I guess we both just wanted to watch both of these games and just do a little bit of scouting, see how they went here, so that we could, properly cover them in the next couple games that they had this season, this season and this weekend. So there you go there. But Rockford wins pretty easily, 31-6 over Howard. Actually, before I move on here, Jayla Putnam for Howard actually got the first touchdown in program history. If I wrote this down correctly and remember it correctly, she got the snap and would go ahead and scramble right for a nice touchdown, a little 15-20 yard scamper at the end there. And she's a good athlete for them to look out for over at Howard. So keep an eye on that. Remember that here. But that was their first game here, so they'll only get better from here. Like I said, Rockford, they go ahead and get their second win of the season, 31-6 over Howard. All right, now let's go ahead and go to this game here. We got number 10 Milligan versus number 11 William Woods. 2 young programs on fire, some of the best young programs in the entire country facing off right here in Kentucky. So let's go ahead and get to it. Milligan starts on offense. Bridget Keiser in at quarterback. Unfortunately, they would go a quick 3-and-out. A nice deflection by Addie Schillick on third down would force that 3-and-out. And so William Woods takes over with the 1st and 7 approaching midfield. 10:31 left here. On first down, Mackenzie Hickson at quarterback flips it forward to Kennedy Van Noy. She would go ahead and give them the first down officially to make it 1st and 20 past midfield. After an incompletion on second down, Hicks rolls out right, throws the drag route to Addie Schillick. That goes for about 5. Hicks on I want to say it's 3rd and 15, makes the rusher miss and then finds Van Noy here, who makes an excellent low catch that was contested, but unfortunately, she would be short here despite the great play. It is 4th and 4, and on 4th down, obviously, they're going to go for it across midfield. Hicks with the snap, and she gets sacked by Chloe Jackson, and so that's a turnover on downs. And so here we go, Milligan with the 1st and 16, 7:04 left. They go ahead and try to test Addie Schillick and this William Woods defense deep, but Schillick with another deflection. And then on second down, it's a big sack by Olivia Perkins. That now makes it 3rd and 20. And then on 3rd and 20, they go ahead and take a deep shot here. Keiser throwing to Krista Quinn, but it's double covered. And so that's another 3-and-out. Their second 3-and-out forced here by William Woods on Milligan. And so William Woods takes over with a 1st and 9 approaching midfield. 5:12 left here. On first down, Hicks finds Natalia Hernandez de Leon, our playmaker of the game in the last game, who gets a nice first down here, 1st and 20 past midfield. We then throw a quick curl to Olivia Perkins for 8. Hicks then scrambles up the middle. That goes for 7. And then Hicks throws a quick out to Van Noy, Kennedy Van Noy, who makes a couple players miss and almost scores, but is stopped just short here. Still, though, the damage is done. They're now in the red zone, 1st and 3. But on 1st and 3 here, they would go ahead and get the snap to Hicks, but she would get sacked once more here by Chloe Jackson again. But it looks like it'll be encroachment on the defense, so the sack won't count there. Half the distance to the goal line, 2nd and 1. And on 2nd and 1 here, Hicks finds Addie Schillick over the middle to make it 6-0. On the PAT, Hicks goes ahead and throws it to Yvonne Brussel, who makes a contested catch here, shakes the defender and reaches over. That's good. The PAT is good there. So now it's 7-0. There's 41.7 seconds left here in the first quarter where Milligan starts this drive here. And this time they get going. They get their first down of the game thanks to a pitch to Ashton Weirley there. And so let's go ahead and actually fast forward here to the second quarter. 3rd and 10 approaching midfield. Keiser throws the drag route to Weirley. She gets 9, is stopped just short here. And so here we go. 4th and 1 approaching midfield. Milligan is going to go for it. And they go ahead and do a hard count here. And they pull William Woods off sides. But that does give them a free play. And so they take a shot downfield. And it is complete here. And so now it is 1st and 5 here. Obviously, they declined that penalty. Regardless, they would have had a second shot at this. They would have gone the first down. So a good play here. Some good mind games by Milligan. On 1st and 5, Keiser evades the rush, does a good job there, and finds Quinn on the out for a good gain. I believe it's Caitlin Quinn on the out. That makes it 1st and 18. Following that, Keiser tries to scramble, but she's stopped short here for a loss of 1. I think that's technically a sack. That's Yvonne Brustel who would go ahead and make the play there. So now it's 2nd and 19. But on 2nd down and 19, Bridget Keiser not backing down. Throws a perfect post to Quinn here. I believe it's Caitlin Quinn, who almost scores, but is stopped just short. 3rd and 2 here. After an incompletion, that now brings up 4th down. And then William Woods, they go ahead and call a timeout with 9 minutes left here. And so out of the timeout here, Milligan looking to score. They go ahead and throw it. But Emma Anderlich comes up with the clutch deflection for William Woods, and that will be a turnover on downs. Now, William Woods would go ahead and take over here, and they would have a 1st and 18 with 8 minutes left, and they would get their first down here thanks to a flip forward to Kennedy Van Noy to make it 1st and 20. But then it looks like this drive would eventually just go ahead and fizzle out here as they would go for it on 4th and 2. But a dropped snap here would make it a turnover on downs. And so Milligan still looking to score, but they got 4 minutes past midfield, a 1st and 18. On 1st down here, Keiser pitches it back to Reinhardt, who then pitches it to Caitlin Quinn, but she's held at the end of this play here regardless. After the play, the damage was already done. But tag on that penalty, it's a 1st and 14 in the red zone here. On 1st down, they go ahead and throw the fade route to Weirley, but great defense by Maddie Jones forces an incompletion. They will then go back to Weirley on 2nd on a drag route here. She would be able to get about 9 yards there. And then on 3rd and 5, Bridget Keiser is sacked by Olivia Perkins, so now it's 4th and 10. Obviously, they're going to go for it here, and here's what happens. Keiser with a snap throws a dot on a slant to Sarah Rancorn here, who brings it in, a strong catch. Just a great play by both the quarterback and the receiver to put them up. This could not have been a more perfect ball, and a great catch by Rancorn as well to bring in this heater. And honestly, it was good defense too. It was just better offense at this point. And so this was big time and puts Milligan on the board, but the PAT is no good. So William Woods, they have the ball here and the lead with 1:22 left, but a pretty clutch sack by Jessica Hudson would go ahead and end that drive here. And so going into half, William Woods leads 7-6 here, and they get the ball. And so here we go. William Woods with the ball here. Mackenzie Hicks on 1st down throws an incompletion. Then on 2nd down, Hicks under pressure by Tatiana Buno here. She throws it, but Buno with the deflection, and then she catches the deflection that she made in the air and returns it to the house for a touchdown here. A pick 6 deflection by her and picked off by her, and the play finished by her to go ahead and put up Milligan 12-7, and then the PAT would be good to make it 13-7. One of the plays of the season here, and a huge play to just turn the entire tide of this game early on, as Milligan now has the lead after William Woods has been leading for the majority of this game. And so here we go, still a lot of football to be played. 11:26 left here. 1st down will be incomplete. On 2nd down, it will be a check down to Maddie Jones here, who will make a player miss and then give them a 1st down. Now 1st and 17. But unfortunately, this William Woods drive would fizzle out as Jessica Hudson gets a big sack to now make it a 2nd down situation to 3rd and 24, and William Woods would just not quite be able to recover it. They're forced to punt it. Now Milligan, they would get the ball with 8:20 left, 1st and 10 approaching midfield here. They would go ahead and get a 1st down thanks to an out route thrown to Caitlin Quinn here on 4th and 1 to give them a 1st and 13 past midfield. But after a couple of deep shots here, where, I mean, honestly, William Woods is just playing great man-to-man defense here, that unfortunately forces them to punt, as well as a couple of drops as well. And so William Woods with the 1st and 6 with 3:49 left, but this becomes a very big defensive struggle here. I mean, it's been a defensive struggle for both teams throughout this whole game here, as both defenses are locked in. Tatiana Buno would actually come up with a huge sack here to make it 3rd and 7 on 2nd down here, and then that would eventually force William Woods to go 3 and out. Now Milligan, they will get the ball here with 1:33 left, 1st and 20 past midfield. After a drop and an overthrow, we now have 3rd and 20 past midfield to start the 4th quarter. And so here we go, 3rd and 20 on the other side of the field. Bridget Keiser rolls out left, and she finds Krista Quinn, who takes it to the house here, just slipping the entire defense here as a Milligan goes up 19-7 right here. They'll go for 2, but the PAT would be knocked away. And so William Woods, now 11:20 left, running out of time. They have to score here. Here's what happens. Hicks goes deep to Natalia Hernandez de Leon, and she is wide open down the left sideline. And so now that gives them a 1st and 9 past midfield on a, I want to say, 30-plus yard pass here. And so 1st and 9 past midfield. Hicks finds Brustol here on the out. She gets 8, and then Hicks on second down gets a snap, tries to throw it over the middle, but it is an interception by Sakia Newell here, and that would pretty much mostly put away the game. I mean, Milligan would have 9:16 left here. They weren't able to sustain a drive here. A couple incompletions would eventually result in a turnover on downs. William Woods would have 6:43 left. That would be their next shot here, but I mean, this offense was just not getting anything here. On 4th and inches, they would try to run it for a first down, but it would be a turnover on downs. And so Milligan would get the ball with under 4 minutes left. They would use up a lot of the clock here before eventually a good pass deflection would make it a turnover on downs. And then William Woods would have 1:57 left here, but they're already down by 2 scores, and they would just not be able to score here. As unfortunately for William Woods, but very fortunate for Milligan, they would drop a close one. Milligan, though, winning a close one here, 19-7, and your playmaker of the game, I think it's pretty obvious, is Tatiana Buno here. I believe the freshman who made some massive plays in this game, not only to completely turn the tide here, but would stifle their success down the line with some big plays on defense. And I mean, this was a defensive battle, don't get it twisted there. Both defenses were making good plays. It just so happened that Milligan's defense was able to score here, and then that big touchdown pass to Krista Quinn to start the fourth quarter pretty much put it away at this point here, as William Woods just not a lot going for them here. And they're a young team, so they'll learn from it, but a tough situation to be in as Milligan holds on to win 19-7 over William Woods here. Milligan, though, looking pretty good here as they are now on a winning streak. And before we go on to the next game, make sure you check out our post-game interview with Tatiana Buno. And by the way, I think we misspelled her name on our TikTok, but you can find that interview on TikTok actually right now at Playmaker Corner. So apologize about the misspelled name, but she is a heck of an athlete, and I mean, has a really bright future. Had a good weekend here, which is a little bit of a spoiler alert. But, you know, winning Playmaker of the game in a close game against another young team in William and Woods, who's a good squad over there, that's definitely big time. So shout out her and shout out Milligan with a nice win here. All right, now let's go ahead and talk about Siena Heights versus Howard Community College here. I believe, if I am not mistaken, I'm pretty sure this is the last game from Friday the 28th. And you know what? I am mistaken. It's the second to last game from Friday the 28th here, but the last one for both the Siena Heights and Howard here. And, you know, this game would not be very close, just being completely honest with you there. To start off, nice pick here by Kiamora Dunn would go ahead and put them up 7-0. She would get the pick and then she would run it in to go ahead and put them up 7-0. PAT would be good after a quick 4-and-out by Howard here, who, by the way, did not punt all weekend, including this game, so it's a turnover on downs here. Kiamora Dunn would go ahead and run it in to make it 13-0 as she's having herself a game. Later on here in this game, Sophia Panico would go ahead and complete a nice pass here to number 7. That would make it 19-0, and then Panico would find Kiki Mercado to make it 26-0 and pretty much put this one out of reach, as Siena Heights would go ahead and take care of Howard, who, I mean, you know, is playing their second game of the season, of their season, and then Siena Heights obviously being very experienced, at least compared to Howard, very experienced, as they win 68-0 in a game that just wasn't super close. But our playmaker of the game was Kiamora Dunn, who's been doing it all for them, so make sure you check out our post-game interview with her on TikTok at Playmaker's Corner. It was good catching up with her and good seeing Siena Heights get a very big win, a confidence booster, honestly, here to end their Friday and then go into next Saturday with that win in mind. All right, now let's go ahead and talk about the last game, actually, from Friday, March 28th. We have Campbellsville versus Rockford here, and some quarterback changes here. For Campbellsville, Journey Knowles would start this one out, and then I think for Rockford, Jenna Grice would go ahead and start this one here, the freshman from Surprise, Arizona. So, to start this one, Rockford would go 3 and out. Nice defense by Campbellsville. And so Campbellsville would get the ball. Journey Knowles in at quarterback. She would lead a nice drive here that would result with them getting into the red zone here and a 4th down situation. But on 4th down, Journey Knowles throws a great throw to the corner here, left corner, to Carly Troutman for a touchdown to make it 6-0, and then Knowles would walk it in to make it 7-0 there. Now for Rockford, they would initially get a 1st down here in the 1st quarter on their 2nd drive, but Campbellsville would eventually force a punt thanks to a J.C. Harper sack. And so let's go ahead and jump to the 2nd quarter. Campbellsville here with the ball. Journey Knowles throws a swing route to Presley Payne, who breaks down the defender and then breaks it loose outside left for the touchdown to make it 13-0 here. They will then, it looked like a complete pass to me, and the PAT would look good, but I guess they said it was no good. So, I mean, either way, Campbellsville, they lead 13-0 here. Now, Rockford with the ball. They would take a shot downfield on 1st down, and Claire Strong with the head top catch, but unfortunate for them, this play would be called back, and then the next couple plays would be a drop snap that would kill this drive, and then another bad snap on what would have been the punt would actually go for a safety. So now it's 15-0 with 4:57 left here, and so now that it's 15-0 for Campbellsville, Corrine Talkington, the freshman, goes back in at quarterback, and she leads a nice drive, ending with her running it in to make it 21-0. A nice throw over the middle makes it 22-0, and then I believe J.C. Harper got a pick 6 on the next Rockford drive to make it 28-0, all in the 2nd quarter as Campbellsville finds a rhythm here, and they defeat Rockford 36-0. A nice game from them to end the day here. And make sure you go ahead and check out our post-game interview with J.C. Harper, who was our playmaker of the game from this one here. She had a good one with that pick 6 and sack as they continue to roll on here and get a win, which is good for their confidence going into Saturday. So there you go there, Campbellsville winning big over Rockford. All right, now moving on, we have our first games from Saturday, March 29th here in Kentucky. Let's go ahead and get that one started with our first one being number 15 Siena Heights versus number 11 William Woods. The battle of first-year programs, 2 young programs here duking it out to start the day, and this was a good one here. Let's go ahead and get started. First quarter, William Woods on offense. Hicks throws to Addie Schillick. Mackenzie Hicks at quarterback throws to Addie Schillick over the middle to make it a 1st down and 19 to start. But this drive would eventually just fizzle out here as a tough play on 1st down will get them no gain, and that would eventually force a 4th and short, which they would end up punting. And so Siena Heights, with the under 10 minutes, would take over. And so Siena Heights would actually take over with the 1st and 19 approaching midfield, but this first drive would not be very successful here. They would technically go for an out. On 4th down, they would go ahead and throw it here on 4th and 10, it looks like, but unfortunately this one would be dropped, so that's a turnover on downs. William Woods would take over with under 7 minutes left. 1st and 10, pass midfield, but they're not able to do too much here. Just a couple checkdowns to Schillick and a drop here that would bring up 4th and 4, and then they would try to check it down to Maddie Jones, but Kaya Moore Dunn would go ahead and get the pull for a turnover on downs. Siena Heights would get the ball, but they would not get too much going here as they would go 3 and out here. And actually, it was a very quiet first quarter. I should have just skipped to the second. So let's go ahead and do that. Both teams won 3 and out here until William Woods, not William Woods. It would be Siena Heights would get the ball to start the second quarter, and they would be able to put together a pretty solid drive here, thanks to Keiser Dunn getting it done for them, as well as Kiki Mercado with some nice plays. But they end a nice PI penalty that would help them out along the way. But they would eventually find themselves in the 1st and 19 in the red zone here, and on second down here, Dunn would try to throw it, but Olivia Perkins, with an aggressive interception, goes ahead and ends that drive here. They had to fight for the ball here, and Perkins just won that battle. And so William Woods would take over here with a first down here with just about 2 minutes left. But on 2nd and 14, Hicks throws it, and this pass, it's open. The player's there. She has a step, but it's a very underthrown. So Kiki Mercado gets the interception to end this drive. But then Siena Heights is not really able to do too much with that here. And so that would be 0-0 at the end of the first half, as both defenses are playing well, but at the same time, both offenses are just struggling to get on track here to start the day. Now, let's go ahead and get to the third quarter here. Siena Heights would go ahead and start with it, but it would not go, or it would not start great, as a low snap would make it 2nd and 12, and then they'd kind of be digging themselves out of that from there. But on 2nd and 12 here, Sophia Panico would go ahead and find Kiki Mercado on the corner to make it 1st and 12 approaching midfield. She would then find Panico, would then find Dunn to make it 2nd and 9. And then, unfortunately here, it looks like Panico is throwing it, and this pass is tipped up by Emma Anderlich. This is in double coverage, by the way, and then eventually picked off by Kennedy Van Noy. So a tough decision there as William Woods takes over with 9:05 left, 1st and 2 approaching midfield. On first down here, Hicks threads the needle on the post to Van Noy to make it now 1st and 3. Past midfield, a big gain there of almost 20 yards after a drop on second down, or on first down. On second down, Hicks then throws it over the middle to Schillick. She makes some moves here and makes some people miss to make it 1st and 13, now in the red zone. On first down here, William Woods would take a shot, but they would go ahead and call a pass interference penalty on Siena Heights. So now it's 1st and 6 here. And on 1st down and 6, Hicks with the snap, pump fakes before finding Addie Schillick in the corner for a touchdown. A beautiful play here to make it 6-0. They would try to pitch it to Maddie Jones on the speed option on the PAT, but she would be short, so it stays at 6-0. Now, Siena Heights would go ahead and take over, but they would not be able to get too much going here, as on 4th and 19, they would take a deep shot, but the great defense of William and Woods would go ahead and force a turnover, knocking that ball away. So, to start the fourth quarter, it's 1st and 20 for William Woods, but Mackenzie Hicks gets the snap, she throws it, and it's picked off by Kayamura Dunn. A huge play here to get them the ball back to start this fourth quarter, but unfortunately they would not be able to do much with that drive here, as they would end up in a turnover on down situation. And so William Woods would get the ball with 1st and 1 approaching midfield, 8:49 left here. Now, on first down, Hicks would take a deep shot here to Yvonne Brustel, but it would be just out of reach here. And then this is where things get a little interesting. They changed it from 1st and 1 approaching midfield to 2nd and 20. And so obviously that's a big change here, as that affects the play calling. And so, I mean, they probably don't take a shot on 1st and 20 and try to hack away at this thing. But very unfortunate decision by the refs there. So now it's 2nd and 20. On 2nd and 20, Hicks scrambles. That goes for 1. And then on 3rd down, they throw it, but it's dropped. So they have to basically go 3 and out here. Change of downs here. Well, not like an official change of downs, but a change of downs mid-drive is kind of wild, as that would eventually give Siena Heights the ball here with under 6 minutes left. And this is where things get interesting. 1st and 6 in the first quadrant. I mean, basically what it would have been if it was just a touchback. Here's what happens. Kayamura Dunn keeps the play alive here, scrambling around before finding, I believe it's Joella Lampton, for a 1st down. On first down, Dunn scrambles. She gets a couple more to make it 2nd and 10, approaching midfield here. And then on 2nd and 10, Dunn does basically the same thing, scrambling here for a nice gain here to make it 1st and 15 past midfield. After a 1-yard scramble by Dunn here, she then throws the corner out here, and it's caught, but she is just out of bounds, the receiver that is. So now it's 3rd down. On 3rd down, Dunn scrambles again here, and so now that brings up a 4th and 7 situation. There's a timeout by Siena Heights at 2:56, or at least I believe it's Siena Heights. Out of the timeout here, 4th and 7, they gotta get this here just for a chance to potentially tie this game. Dunn gets a snap, rolls out right, and throws it deep to Mercado, who makes an excellent catch here. It's now making 1st and 3 in the red zone. They then run a dive with Panico. I believe it's Sophia Panico that goes for 1, and then 2-minute warning hits. Then they direct snap it to Jordan Bailey, who pushes forward to make it 6-6. On the PAT, with a chance to win the game, or at least take the lead here, they throw it, but it's a good deflection by Addie Schulich to keep this thing tied. So now it is 1:41 left in this game. William Woods with the 1st and 6. Both teams have not been in an overtime game, so if they go into overtime, it would have been their first overtime game and potentially one of their first overtime wins or losses. Now, this drive for William Woods, though, they have plenty of time, but it does not start well, as it starts out with 2 drops, bringing up 3rd down. And then on 3rd down here, they would go ahead. Hicks would throw it to Van Noy on a post to complete it, and that would be big time to give them a 1st and 10 approaching midfield. On 1st down, Hicks throws it over the middle to Natalia Hernandez de Leon to go ahead and get a gain of 5. She would then throw it deep here, but it looks like there's a miscommunication as there's nobody in the area. So now it's 3rd down. And then on 3rd down here, Hicks throws it over the middle, but it's picked off by Dunn. A huge play with 46.4 seconds left. 1st and 15 approaching midfield. Siena Heights with a chance to win this one in what would be an upset. After a throwaway and a drop here, Siena Heights calls a timeout at 33.4 seconds here, and it is 3rd down what they get back, and here is what happens. Dunn with the snap, she throws it, but it's picked off over the middle by Olivia Perkins, and not only is she picking it off, but she's taking it to the house for the game winner here, potentially for William Woods, as they go up 12-6. Now, it's not over. PAT's no good, by the way. It's not over for Siena Heights. They get the ball with 23.6 seconds left, 2 timeouts. Here's what happens. 1st down, Dunn scrambles, gets a solid gain. It's 1st and 17 with 16 seconds left. On the next play, it's thrown away. On the play after that, there's a false start, unfortunately, that makes it 2nd and 22. On 2nd down here, Dunn with the snap, throws it, but it's incomplete. That now brings up 3rd down here. They try to throw it over the middle, unfortunately, once more, and Olivia Perkins gets the game-sealing interception. 3 interceptions in this game as William Woods wins 12-6 in a thriller over Siena Heights here. Playmaker of the game is obviously Olivia Perkins. Make sure you check out our post-game interview with her on TikTok at Playmaker's Quarter, and hopefully that will be posted in other spots here soon. But had a great game to pretty much win this one for William Woods. This was a back-and-forth game, just a lot of mistakes by both of these young teams here. And it's tough because there are multiple opportunities for both teams to take the lead or stack on, their momentum. And like I said, just back and forth. At one point, both offenses were super cold while the defenses were playing well. And I guess I shouldn't say 1 point because it was most of the game here. But at the end of the day, William Woods' defense came through and they get back on track with a nice win over Siena Heights. Like I said, 12-6. All right, now the next game would be Milligan versus Howard Community College here. And this one wasn't super close. I'll just give a quick scoring recap here. To start, Bridget Keiser would find Sam Urso at 2:58 in the first quarter to make it 6-0. She would then find Sakaya Newell to make it 7-0. Eventually, they would get the ball back, and Keiser would find Elena Green to make it 13-0, and the PAT would be good with about 8:30 left here in the second quarter. Still in the second quarter, Keiser finds Sarah Rankhorn to make it 20-0, and then Caitlin Quinn on the PAT to make it 21-0, and then she would find Chloe Jackson here in the second to eventually make it 28-0. As this one would be over, Milligan takes care of Howard pretty easily here, 40-0. Following that, William Woods would then play Rockford, and this one would start out just a little bit slow here, but William Woods would eventually run away with this one. In the first quarter, Mackenzie Hicks throws it up the seam to find Addie Schillick to make it 6-0. Then she throws it to Olivia Perkins to make it 7-0 on the PAT. Then fast forward to the second quarter, fourth down here with 4:53 left. Mackenzie Hicks throws a nice out route to Kennedy Van Noy to make it 13-0, and then a check down to Brusel here to make it 14-0. Later on in this quarter here, Mackenzie Hicks would go back to Yvonne Brusel here, and it would be on a post route where she would make a nice move after the catch, little hip move to make it 20-0. PAT would be no good, but in the third quarter here, it would be a big throw down the left sideline. Mackenzie Hicks finding Natalia Hernandez de Leon to make it 26-0, and this one would pretty much be over as William Woods gets a big win here to go ahead and end their weekend here, ending on a 2-game winning streak, beating Rockford 26-0, and then previous to this, Siena Heights 12-6 here, as they will be playing the University of St. Mary on the 9th, which will be in a week, so they'll basically take a week off and then play them here. But William Woods got to be feeling good about where they're at after going on a 2-game winning streak, really 3 and 4 here on the weekend. All right, now this next game would be number 14 Campbellsville versus number 15 Siena Heights here, and let's just go ahead and hop into this one. For Campbellsville, Corrine Talkington starting at quarterback. The first down would be incomplete, but a pitch right to Presley Payne would give them a first down, their first one here, to make it 1st and 17. Following that, Talkington finds Angeline Beecher on a slant for a 7-yard gain. She then hits JC Harper for a first down pass midfield, about a 1st and 20. After a speed option to Payne that goes for 6 here, Talkington finds Alex Odom, fellow freshman, for about 5 to make it 3rd and 9. Then Talkington throws a nice out route to JC Harper to put them in the red zone for the first time today here, or at least in this game, to make it 1st and 15. After a throwaway and then a knockdown, a pass deflection on second, it's now 3rd down, and Talkington throws it deep to Angeline Beecher right up the seam, and it's on the money to make it 6-0 as Campbellsville takes the early lead. PAT's no good here, but Siena Heights gets the ball with about 5:30 left. After an overthrow here, Kayamora Dunn would go ahead and make up for that with the scramble to give them a 1st and 20. She will then check it down to number 17, but that would actually go for a loss thanks to JC Harper. So now it's 2nd and 23. Dunn then scrambles right for 8, and then throws a pass, but it's slightly overthrown, so they will have to punt it. Campbellsville takes over with about a minute left here, 1st and 2, approaching midfield, and on first down, Corrine Talkington gets the snap here and throws the crosser to Alex Odom, and she does the rest as she goes to the house to make it 12-0. A great throw by Talkington, and then Odom doing the rest here as this freshman duo getting things started here for Campbellsville. Now, going into the second quarter, it's 12-0 Campbellsville. Siena Heights, they need to get going here, so here's what happens. Sophia Panico finds her sister Victoria Panico on a check down that goes for 6, and then 2 plays later, it would be a dive by Kayamora Dunn to make it 1st and 19. Panico then checks it down to Dunn on first down. She goes ahead and gets 4. Panico then checks it down to Kiki Mercado. She gets 5. Then there's an overthrow, so that brings up 4th down. And unfortunately, it's 4th and 10, so Siena Heights just decides to play it safe and punt it here. Now, Campbellsville, they get the ball, but a couple incompletions here puts them in a little bit of a tough situation. It is 1st and 20 past midfield. Eventually, Talkington finds Odom on a crosser that gives them 1st and 20 past midfield. Then there's another incompletion. And then on 2nd down, Talkington just gets a little impatient, takes a deep shot here. And this one's easily picked off by Kiki Mercado. A penalty's also thrown against Campbellsville, so that gives Siena Heights a pretty solid spot of 1st and 17 past midfield. After an incompletion on 1st down, on 2nd, Dunn scrambles for 10. She then scrambles again, this time putting them in the red zone here, going for, I want to say 9, I could be wrong here. It's 1st and 16 in the red zone. On 1st down, Dunn checks it down to Kiki Mercado, but they're going to go ahead and tag on a penalty to those yards that she got. So now it's 1st and 6. On 1st down, Keiser Dunn rushes up the middle, reaches out, but is just short. 2nd and 2. They do the same play here, but she stops short again, this time inches. It's like 3rd down. They then run a corner out, but this one's incomplete. So now it's 4th down, and Siena Heights, they call a timeout here to stop the clock at 38.7 seconds. And I mean, a little bit of a predictable play call, but it works. Keiser Dunn with the snap, slips past the defense and walks it in to make it 12-6 as they are right back in this game. Campbellsville with 33 seconds looking to make something happen. Here's what happens. Talkington looking to make up that turnover from earlier, finds Annalise Beecher on a quick hitter that makes it 1st and 20. She then finds Presley Payne here, she throws it to a receiver who then pitches it to Payne and then takes off for a nice gain here. That is about 19 yards on the gain, so now it's 2nd and 1. Then there's a throwaway, so now it's 3rd down with 17 seconds left. On 3rd down, Talkington throws it, but it's incomplete. So now it brings up 4th down with 10 seconds left. And here is what happens on 4th down and 1. Talkington with a snap finds Angie Beecher on the post route, a dot to make it 1st and 13 in the red zone. This was a beautiful throw by Corinne Talkington, and then a great catch here by Angie Beecher to go ahead and put them in the red zone here. So now here we go in the red zone, and they obviously call a timeout before they call this first play. 1st down here, just a couple seconds left. Talkington with the snap, throws it to the corner. It's tipped up, and it's caught by Angeline Beecher off the tip. That makes it 19-6. This home crowd going crazy as I love that one here. So that's a good deal. Personal foul will be thrown against, I want to say, Siena Heights. So they go ahead and they go for 2 on this one, and they will get it. Talkington finds Odom on a laser to make it 20-6. Great way to bounce back here as Campbellsville has all the momentum going into halftime with this 14-point lead. But Siena Heights does start with the ball here, and it starts out with a pretty nice drive. Sophia Panico finding Keiser Dunn for a 1st and 12, but eventually this drive would go ahead and fizzle out here. A pass to Kiki Mercado would be knocked away by Annalise Beecher on 4th and 4, so that would be a turnover on downs. Now Campbellsville, they would not be able to do too much here with this drive here, and so they will eventually punt it, but by the time they do, it's the start of the 4th quarter, and so Siena Heights has a 1st and 6 here. Not quite out of it, but they're down 2 scores. They really need a score here. But unfortunately, they do find themselves in a 4th down situation, and obviously they got to go for it. Keiser Dunn throws it up the seam to Kiki Mercado, but this one unfortunately is dropped. A tough one here, and it looked like she would have been able to make the play. It's just a tough lapse of focus, and so that's a turnover on downs. Campbellsville with 6:58 left here. They are trying to put this one away, but Journey Knowles goes in here. At some point, it looked like Talkington got hurt, and so that makes things a little interesting, but Knowles is in. She goes ahead and finds Presley Payne. She makes it 1st and 14. Following that, Knowles on the snap, 1st down. She throws an out route. This one is on the money, a laser, a perfect throw to JC Harper, who burns down the sideline and puts this one away to put Campbellsville up 26-6. And then Knowles goes ahead and throws a nice ball here to, I think, Annalise Beecher, either Annalise or Angie Beecher, to make it 27-6. A nice toe tap there as Campbellsville officially puts away Siena Heights in this one, who was kind of sticking around for a solid amount of this game here. And so final score of this one here, we got Campbellsville beating Siena Heights 27-6. Playmaker of this game has to be Corinne Talkington. She came out and she was on fire, playing some really good football. And outside of that kind of rough interception in the first half, she lit up the scoreboard and she played great football for Campbellsville as they were able to go up early on Siena Heights. And then Journey Knowles hopping in there to go ahead and pretty much end this game here would be big time as well. And so Corinne Talkington is your playmaker of the game. Make sure you check out our TikTok at Playmaker's Corner for our post-game interview with Talkington here, as I would say that was probably her first signature game, hopefully first of many for her. So there you go there, Campbellsville getting the win over Siena Heights. Now our next game here at the Flag Football Frenzy, we have Milligan versus Rockford, and this game started a little slow here, and actually Rockford would go up early. Jenna Grice taking a shot up the seam here to Clara Strong, finishes the play from there on a massive pass and catch to make it 6-0 in the first quarter, Rockford leading Milligan. But in the second quarter, Milligan really woke up here. A touchdown throw from Bridget Keiser to, I believe, Caitlin Quinn made it 6-6. Then a PAT to Sakaya Newell would make it 8-6 as they went to 2 there. And then they would throw, Keiser would throw another touchdown to Caitlin Quinn to make it 14-6 with 3:50 left in the second. PAT's no good. And then, I think these are all Caitlin Quinn touchdowns in the second. Keiser throws a quick one to her again as she would score near the end of this quarter to make it 20-6. And then from there on, Campbellsville would pull away as they won 33-6, shutting out Rockford, in the second half here, and then having a very good offensive performance, as that now makes it 6 games in a row that Milligan has won, and altogether only 2 losses on the season here. A 3-point loss to Campbellsville at the beginning of the year, near the beginning of the year. Just about a month ago, I would say, and then losing to Life just about 2 weeks ago by 1 point. Other than that, Milligan rolling. And, everyone looked good here, but I do think, I would say Bridget Keiser was our playmaker of the game, as she was on fire, not only in this game, but all weekend long. So make sure you eventually check out our post-game interview with her here, talking about this game and then the rest of this season for Milligan. But a very successful weekend for Milligan as they go 4-for-4 here, and we'll be looking to continue that streak as they go up to Michigan next week. Now the last game of this Flag Football Frenzy, we had Campbellsville taking on Howard Community College, but this was also their senior night, and this was actually the first one that I've been able to, that we've been able to attend as a podcast, at least on the college level here. And, they're honoring Journey Knowles, Hannah Love, and Presley Payne. Presley Payne and Hannah Love, I don't think they played flag football before, but it's been an honor being able to cover their career these last couple years, as they started with Campbellsville at the very beginning of this program, and they've come a long way. And then you have Journey Knowles, who really joined last year and made an impact last year, and has been a good quarterback rotating in for them. And so, great seniors. I think they set a really good foundation over there at Campbellsville, and their impact is definitely going to be felt here once they graduate next year. But we'll talk about all that when they are actually gone. For now, they are playing in this game, and so here we go. First quarter, Journey Knowles finds JC Harper for a early touchdown reception to make it 6-0 with 8:15 left. Knowles then throws a slant here to Ava Kelly, the freshman, to make it 13-0, and then finds Angie Beecher to make it 14-0. And then JC Harper gets a big-time pick 6 to make it 20-0 with just under 50 seconds left here in the first quarter, as Campbellsville just ran away with this one against Howard and would win 34-0. Got a lot of players in there to play, but this was a good game for them and a good weekend for them altogether. I mean, only went 3-4 on the weekend, and one of those was a 1-point loss to William and Woods. So gotta feel good about that if you're Campbellsville here. Once again, shout out them. They invited us out, accommodated us, and showed some great hospitality down there in Kentucky, and so we really appreciate that here on the podcast. Make sure you check out our post-game interview with head coach Kidwell over there, over at Campbellsville. That is, we talked to him a little bit about the culture of the team, how this weekend went all together, and all of that great stuff here. So make sure you go ahead and check that out. And yeah, shout out Campbellsville. They put on a great event this weekend here, and we really liked what we saw from them as well, but we'll talk about that more on the power rankings.
Next up here, we have St. Thomas, who beat Point 39-12. Brooke Bogatz threw for 4 touchdowns, and Sydney Brooks also threw for 2 more. Rihanna Baker caught 3 touchdowns. Tashumba Washington had 7 catches for 104 yards and a touchdown. On defense, Dominique Perez-Moore caught 2 interceptions for St. Thomas. Kariah Williams had a nice game for Point. She went 8 for 11 for 48 yards and 2 touchdowns. And your playmaker of the game in this one will be Brooke Bogatz.
Then later this Saturday, we had number 2 Thomas versus number 22 FMU. And this really wasn't that close of a game, but it was closer than I thought it would be, as Thomas won 28-0 here. Looking at the box score, it does not look like the quarterback battle has exactly settled here. It'll be interesting to see what happens moving forward, but Keelan Coleman got the majority of the snaps, 18 of 24, 191 yards, threw 2 touchdowns, but also threw 2 interceptions. Holly Neer, though, 5 of 9 for 43 yards and 2 touchdowns. Then Alexa Wilson, 2 of 3 for 15 yards and an interception there. So interesting things going on in the Thomas quarterback room. As far as receiving goes, Destiny Lockett led with 4 receptions, 62 yards, and a touchdown. Lockett also had 1 pass attempt, but it was incomplete. Janae Scott with 3 receptions, 46 yards. Shemaiah Coward, 5 for 44 and a touchdown. Maddie Hoagland, 6 for 34 and a touchdown. On defense for them, Zariah Hercules, Janae Scott, Kaylin Herb each had 3 tackles. Scott and Herb each with a sack, and then Giselle Jones with an interception. The usual suspects on defense, so nothing really crazy there. For FMU here, Josiah Christie, 12 of 36, 72 yards here. It has her listed at only throwing 1 interception here, which is correct. That is to Giselle Jones. And then her lead receiver was Amiria Smith, who had 3 receptions for 31. Mariah Brooks, 3 for 17. Oriana Brooks, 3 for 14 here, but just not much going over there on offense. On defense, though, a little bit of production. Dasani Newsom, 6 total tackles that led them. Amiria Smith had 5 and then an interception. And then Josiah Christie, 3 tackles and an interception here. Like I said, not as bad as I thought it would be. And even then, 2 interceptions for FMU. Unfortunately, they just couldn't score off of those. That's not bad either. But Thomas, they still take care of FMU 28-0.
What is going on, y'all? This is Gino with the Playmakers Corner podcast, and it is time to recap some KCAC flag football. In this one, we got the Southwestern Mound Builders hosting the St. Mary Spires in a matchup that had a ton of highlights. Southwestern is considered one of the contenders for the KCAC crown this season, whereas St. Mary is still in their rebuilding stage. But this game did end up being a bit closer than you might think, so let's not waste any more time and jump right into this recap. It'll be St. Mary ball, 1st and 6. A direct snap goes to Braylee Chris, who flips it to Talia Wright, who flips it to London Reed for a big-time first down to make it 1st and 13 for the Spires. After a drop pass, another series of pitches after a direct snap gets the Spires 3 more yards. On 3rd and 10, the freshman QB Ariana Rivera finds Talia Wright on a short crosser for 2 yards, and that'll make it 4th and 8, but St. Mary will choose to punt it here. And it will be 1st and 2 for Southwestern with 9 minutes left in the first quarter following the punt. The freshman QB Kennedy Hayes connects with Olivia Manfrey for a first down across midfield. On 1st and 16, Kennedy Hayes has Olivia Manfrey down the sideline, but the pass is just out of reach there. On 2nd and long, Hayes hits Mary Jones on a slant for 3 yards. And on 3rd and 13, Talia Wright tracks down Kennedy Hayes on the scramble. It will be 4th and 11 as Southwestern prepares to go for it here. On 4th down, Hayes steps up, but her pass is well short of Olivia Manfrey and picked off by Talia Wright. It will be 1st and 8 for St. Mary in their own territory with about 6 minutes left here in the first quarter. On 1st down, a direct snap to Trinity Scott gets the Spires near midfield, and it will be 2nd and 1 here as the Spires call timeout with 5:13 left here in the first quarter. Coming out of the timeout, Tegan Smith breaks up a pass over the middle, and on 3rd and 1, a drop snap makes it 4th and 3, and St. Mary will be going for it here. Ariana Rivera takes the snap and finds London Reed over the middle, but Southwestern gets the flagpole just before Reed is able to get across midfield, and that will be a turnover on downs. It is now 1st and 19 for Southwestern in St. Mary territory. A drop pass is nearly picked off here on 1st down, and on the next play, Kennedy Hayes slings it deep, and it is a perfect pass to Mary Jones for a massive gain into the red zone. It is now 1st and 11 in the red zone after that Hayes to Jones connection. On 1st down in the red zone, Kennedy Hayes rolls out right, and she has Olivia Manfrey wide open in the end zone, and that will be a mound builder touchdown. And the extra point was good there, so Southwestern now leads 7-0 with 2 minutes left here in the first quarter. It will be 1st and 6 for St. Mary following that score. On 1st and 6, a direct snap is shut down by Andrea Moon after 2 yards. And on 2nd and 4, Andrea Moon keeps it rolling here as she gets the sack for a loss of 5. And that will take us to the end of the first quarter. Southwestern leads St. Mary 7-0. It will be 3rd and 9 here for St. Mary to start off the second quarter. A pass over the middle is shut down, and that will make it 4th and 3, and St. Mary will elect to punt here. It is now 1st and 2 for Southwestern near midfield. A handoff goes to Carla Lopes, but it is shut down by Braylee Chris for a loss of 2 yards. On 2nd and 4, London Reed breaks up a pass, and it will be 3rd and 4 here for Southwestern. Kennedy Hayes fires it down the sideline, and Mary Jones makes an adjustment and comes down with the catch for a huge gain in the red zone. It will be 1st and 12 here for the Mound Builders. Following an incomplete pass on 2nd and 12, Kennedy Hayes rolls out right and finds Viviana Solis, who sneaks around a flagpole and takes it in for the touchdown. The Mound Builders now lead 13-0 with 7:18 left here in the first half. It will be 1st and 6 for St. Mary following that score, but they would actually go 3 and out here as Andrea Moon continues to dominate in this one defensively. It is now 1st and 7 for Southwestern in their own territory following the punt with 5 minutes left here in the half. But Southwestern would actually end up going 3 and out as well here as Sanaya Glover and Demi Hilton made some big plays for the St. Mary defense there on that drive. It will be 1st and 19 here for St. Mary just over midfield with 2:41 left here in the first half. Following an incomplete pass, Andrea Moon gets the diving flagpole for a sack, and she is having a hell of a game here to make it 3rd and 21. On 3rd and long, a short crosser goes to London Reed, and it is stopped, but holding on Southwestern there makes it 3rd and 10. Andrea Moon bats down the pass on the next play to make it 4th and 10, and Southwestern is going for it here as Ariana Rivera's pass deep over the middle is picked off by Olivia Manfrey. It will be 1st and 3 here for Southwestern with 41 seconds left in the first half. And Sanaya Glover would get a sack on that first down play, and that would take us to halftime as Southwestern leads St. Mary 13-0 as we head into halftime. It will be 1st and 6 for Southwestern to start us off here in the second half. A check down goes to Carla Lopes, and that gets the Mound Builders a first down. On 1st and 16, it is an incomplete pass followed by a false start on the next snap to make it 2nd and 21. On 2nd and long, Kennedy Hayes connects with Viviana Solis for a solid gain, plus a roughing the passer flag on St. Mary makes it 1st and 1 near midfield. Hayes' deep pass on first down to Olivia Manfrey is very well covered by London Reed, who was glued to Manfrey for that entire route. On second and short, a snap goes way over the head of Kennedy Hayes, and that makes it 3rd and 14 now. On third and long, a deep ball is incomplete, and that will make it 4th and 14 as Southwestern will elect to punt after having it 1st and 1 right up near midfield. It will be 1st and 6 here for St. Mary after the touchback on the punt. Following an incomplete pass, Ariana Rivera finds Demi Hilton for the first down to make it 1st and 20. On 1st and 20, Sharifa Piamonte gets a big-time sack to make it 2nd and 30 now. And then following a drop pass by an open receiver, that will be another incomplete pass following that, as it will be 4th and 30, and St. Mary will be forced to punt here. It is now 1st and 15 in St. Mary territory for Southwestern following the punt, but they would actually end up going 3 and out here with Demi Hilton getting a sack on that play to help force the punt. It will be 1st and 13 for St. Mary after a great punt, but they would actually end up going 3 and out here, and that takes us to the end of the first quarter. Southwestern is still up 13-0 over St. Mary. It is now 1st and 19 just over midfield for Southwestern following the punt to start us off here in the fourth quarter. Kennedy Hayes finds a receiver on a slant, and she hands it off to Olivia Manfrey as Manfrey runs by for a very nice gain. And I have to say, that was an awesome play call there. It is now 2nd and 7 as the Mound Builders call timeout with 9:52 left in the game. Coming out of the timeout, Kennedy Hayes avoids a sack and has Olivia Manfrey wide open for the touchdown. Southwestern goes up 19-0 now with 9:41 left in the game. And Talia Wright would actually end up getting a pick six for St. Mary with about a minute left in the game. And they got the extra point, but the final score in this one will be Southwestern 19, St. Mary 7. And your playmaker of the game in this one will be Olivia Manfrey with 2 receiving touchdowns and an interception on defense. This is Gino with the Playmakers Corner podcast, and I want to thank you all for listening to this recap. Next up here, Florida Gateway destroyed Life 62-12. For Florida Gateway, Kayla Ludwig had a fantastic game. She went 18 for 25 for 4 touchdowns and no interceptions. Alexandra Harris led all receivers with 4 receiving touchdowns, and she led the team in yards. Altira Gooch went off for 120 yards and a touchdown on 6 receptions for Life. Your playmaker of the game in this one will be Kayla Ludwig. Next up here, we have Keiser, who murdered Reinhardt 89-0. And folks, prepare yourselves for some of these stats. Haley Young exploded for 11 passing touchdowns. That is a school record. 6 of those went to Kennedy Foster, 3 to Chloe Griffin. And then defensively, Ashley Clam had 4 interceptions just for herself. And then also on defense, Adriana Cavallati had a team-leading 11 flag pulls and 2 interceptions. Your playmaker of the game will be Haley Young. Next up here, we have Life, who beat Huntingdon College 27-12. Cheyenne Brooks balled out, going 20 for 28 with 3 touchdowns and no turnovers. Latoya Mitchell was the leading receiver for Life with 10 receptions for 81 yards and a touchdown. Defensively, Altiera Gooch and Michaela Modest both had an interception, with Gooch also having a receiving touchdown on offense. Your playmaker of the game in this game will be Cheyenne Brooks for those 3 touchdowns. Next up here, Kansas Wesleyan shut out Graceland 46-0. Chihiro Awada went ballistic with 6 passing touchdowns, going 24 for 31 for 269 yards. Aaliyah Wood was the leading receiver for the Coyotes. She had 88 yards and 2 receiving touchdowns on 6 receptions. She has truly been a fantastic addition to that team. Defensively here for the Coyotes, Alexa Manser had an interception. Your playmaker of the game here will be Chihiro Awada. And lastly, here we have Baker shutting out Cottey 33-0. We actually had Sanaya Waller starting at QB for Baker. She went 16 for 24 for 214 yards and 4 passing touchdowns alongside a rushing touchdown as well. Defensively here for Baker, Kaylee Phillips had an interception and Kenya Arias had a sack, and she also led the team in flag pulls with 8. Your playmaker of the game for that one will be Sanaya Waller. And folks, that will do it here for the box score recaps in week 6. This is Gino with the Playmakers Corner podcast, and thank you for listening.
All right, thank you, Gino. But we do have one more NAIA matchup to talk about, and it is Ottawa versus Midland. This one happened on Sunday, actually, so today when I'm recording this, March 30th here, between number 1 Ottawa and number 12 Midland, and this just was not a close game here. Very similar to the last one. Ottawa wins 38-7. Looking at some of the stats from this game, Madison Carrera, obviously the playmaker of the game, 23 of 30, 235 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Also 20 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground, that is. And then her lead receivers were Tatiana Dos Santos, 7 for 91, Jaslyn Camacho, 4 for 62 and a touchdown, and then Marley Spielberg, 6 for 43 and 2 touchdowns. On defense for Ottawa, Sue Kaufman, 8 tackles, 151-yard interception. Then you have Jucani Washington with 4. Leilani Kamau had 8 tackles as well. And then Washington had an interception, Talia McInnes had an interception, and DJ Paris had a sack, as Ottawa continues to take care of business. For Midland here, Angel Yuan Kyle, not even that bad as far as completion percentage of a game, 29 of 41 for 199 yards, 1 touchdown, but did throw 3 interceptions here at 22 rushing yards. As far as receiving goes, Emily Farron led with 9 receptions, 67 yards here. Laya Livingston, 5 for 55, and their lone touchdown. On defense, Sydney Red had 10 tackles, and then you had Blaylock here, who had 2 sacks in this game for Midland, but obviously that was not enough, as Ottawa takes care of Midland 38-7. All right, now let's go ahead and talk about the Atlantic East Conference. We have a number of teams that played here in week 6 from this D2 conference here. Let's go ahead and get started, though, with our first matchup of the week from Monday, March 24th. We had Eastern playing Penn State. I think it's Schuylkill is actually how you say it. It only took me a couple weeks to figure that out here. But they actually played them twice here on Monday, which is interesting. Pretty much back-to-back here. But going into this game, Eastern was 2-2, I believe. They lost their first 2 games against Marymount and Immaculata, and then they got their first one actually against Penn State just a couple days ago, 34-0, and then they beat Newman just barely, but in a thriller 14-12. So going into this one, looking to get back into, well, not get back into, but have a winning record for the first time in program history. For Penn State, on the other hand, struggles have continued. They've lost pretty much every game since they beat Immaculata 19-6 almost a month ago, well, 20 days ago at this point here, and like I said, just lost to Eastern, and honestly not too much changed here. Eastern would go ahead and sweep Penn State in both games 2-0, and neither would be close. In the first one, Eastern would win 33-0 here. Let's start with their stats. Kira Green, 8 of 14, 101 yards and a touchdown. It looks like they had another player play quarterback, Dominique Geiger, who went 3 of 3 for 40 yards and a touchdown. But Kyla Massenberg added on 83 yards, rushing yards, that is, and 2 rushing touchdowns. Kira Green also had 11 rushing yards to go with her 1 passing touchdown and 101 yards there. Now, as far as receiving goes, Kyla Massenberg had herself a day, 4 receptions, 81 yards, and a touchdown to lead the team. Trinity Upton had the other receiving touchdown with 2 receptions for 12 yards. Looking on defense for Eastern, I think it's Sanaj Tyler. Excuse me if I'm saying that wrong, but she led with 4 tackles in this one. for Penn State here. NAIA King, 415 for 36 yards and a pick. Did have 52 rushing yards on 9 carries, but not much going for them here. Riley Cinco, though, leading with 9 tackles. That was the first matchup. In the second matchup for them, Eastern won up closer, 21-0 here. Let's start with Penn State. This time, NAIA King, 6 of 7 for 43 yards. Did throw 1 pick here. Had 17 rushing yards. Riley Cinco had some passing attempts as well. 6 of 11, only for 5 yards and 2 picks. So she kind of struggled there. And then the lead receiver was Malik Mawafi with 6 receptions for 31 yards. And then it was Riley Cinco and Sierra Wisniewski who led with 4 tackles each. For Eastern, close win, but they still win here. 3 rushing touchdowns by this squad. Kyle Massenberg had 1 as well as 66 yards. Kira Green had 1, and then Dominique Geiger had 1 as well. Not much going as far as receiving goes. I mean, I think it's Damrier Moyet. I feel like I'm saying that wrong, but she had 1 big 45 receiving catch there, and that's pretty much it. And then on defense, Kyle Massenberg and Jariah Johnson led with 5 tackles. So there you go. They're Eastern sweeping Penn State on Monday. Let's go ahead and get to Wednesday, though. Got to see Eastern play Holy Family, and this one wasn't super close here. Eastern actually went up 20-0 pretty early on in the game, and then that would actually be the final score, 20-0. Eastern's defense putting in a lot of work here. Let's start with their stats in this game. Kyle Massenberg kind of emerging as one of their top athletes, 7 tackles, a sack, and a pass breakup. And then you have Sanaj Tyler, I want to say, with an interception, and then Dominique Geiger with an interception as well on defense for them. And then offensively, Kira Green, she looked pretty good when I watched her play. Had a nice throw to the corner for a lone touchdown, 8 of 14, passing touchdown, that is. And she went 8 of 14 for 102 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Also had a nice rushing touchdown at the beginning of the game to get things started. So there you go there. Also ran for 39 yards, and then Kyle Massenberg adding on another 30 yards. On the receiving end of things, though, it was Damrier Moyet, who had 4 receptions for 81 yards and a receiving touchdown here, as Eastern takes care of business there. For Holy Family, it was mostly Jalissa Dales who passed. They started out with Annalise Davis, but Dales looks like to be kind of their more reliable quarterback. She went 6 of 15, though, 55 yards and 2 picks. Davis 3 of 5 for 30 yards. Davis did have 7 carries for 41 yards, most of those being sweeps, but just not quite being able to do too much. She also had 6 receptions for 55 yards, as she's kind of emerged as that main option on offense for Holy Family. But for them to win more games, they gotta go ahead and carve out more roles for the rest of their team here, which, you know, there is plenty of time to do that. It's still, I mean, look, this team is really just getting started, but it looks like they found a couple players that they know that they can rely on right now here. So there you go. But unfortunately for Holy Family, they are now sitting at 0-3. At least Wednesday, March 26th, when I'm recording this part of the segment, they are sitting at 0-3 with losses to Centenary Newman and now Eastern. Then we have our last game from Wednesday, March 26th. We have Immaculata playing Newman here, and Immaculata would go ahead and win kind of a close one, 19-7, which breaks a 2-game losing streak that they are on here, losing to Centenary in a close one, mind you, and then Marymount in not so much of a close one there. So good for them as they go ahead and break that winning streak with that 19-7 win. For Newman, a little bit of a mixed bag going into this game. I mean, they were 3-1 here, so this is a tough one to drop. I felt like this was a game that they could have won here, and it just got away from them. So there you go. But let's go ahead and look at the stats here. Let's start with Immaculata. Sydney Butcher, 13 of 18, 126 yards, 2 touchdowns. Also had 35 rushing yards and a touchdown, as she is kind of emerging as one of the more talented, better quarterbacks in this conference here. As far as receiving goes, Abigail Lentowski had 5 receptions 46 yards and a touchdown. And then Eliana Zatkowski had 4 receptions, 35 yards, and a receiving touchdown. On defense for them, it was Theresa Joppa who led with 7 tackles. And then you had Abigail Lentowski with a sack and interception here. And Eliana Zatkowski, had an interception and 2 pass breakups to go for them as well. Now, for Newman here, Gia Santorello went 10 of 20 for 99 yards and a touchdown and 2 picks. Also had 31 rushing yards here. Her only for the receiver, it was a receiving touchdown, but her only touchdown that she scored was to Kayla Maish, I want to say, who had 4 receptions for 59 yards and a touchdown. On defense for Newman, it was Danya Wilson, I think is how you say it, who had 7 tackles, and that led the team. Anna Tran with a sack here for them. But unfortunately for Newman, this game just kind of got away from them here. At halftime, it was only 6-0. Then they would score in the third. Maculata would then score another touchdown in the third and in the fourth as well to pretty much put this one away here. But a tough go, but it's all a learning experience here as Maculata goes ahead and gets their first win here since it looks like they beat Eastern on March 14th. So there you go there. They are now 2-5 after Wednesday, March 26th. All right, now let's talk about the games from March 29th, Saturday here. We have Centenary versus Holy Family, and this was a close one. At halftime, Centenary led 7-6 here, but Holy Family would get a score in the third quarter and then hold them to the end to win a close one, 12-7. It looks like here, Alice, I want to say Davis had a 39-yard touchdown run to go ahead and give them the lead there, which was big time for Holy Family, who did previously lose to them on March 17th, 21-0. So for them to steal this win here, 7-12, is absolutely big time. Let's go ahead and look at the stats here. Let's start with the Holy Family. It looks like Morgan Sims got all the pass attempts, only 5 for 10 here. Also had 9 rushes for 23 yards and that touchdown. Like I said, Alice Davis, she got the eventual game winner. Had 7 rush attempts for 68 yards and a touchdown. Also had 3 receptions for 25 yards for Holy Family. On defense, it was Grace Bergmark who led with 6 tackles there. And then you had Morgan Sims with a pick and Kieran Kusick, I want to say, with an interception as well. For Centenary, a little bit of an upset here, right? But Eve Haddad started, or it looks like she got the majority of the pass attempts, but struggled here. 3 of 7 for 23 yards and 2 picks. Jen Magrino, though, had the majority of carries here, 10 carries for 100 yards. Kyrie Keys had 5 for 67 and a touchdown, and then Haddad also had 6 carries for 41 yards here. Their lead receiver, Brianna Worthy, with only 2 receptions for 24 yards. On defense, Brianna Worthy and Jenna Magrino led, or co-led, in tackles with 5 each, but obviously not enough, as his defense really struggled to get anything going here, as Holy Family gets the 12-7 win over Centenary. And by the way, that was Holy Family's first win in the program history after starting the season 0-3. They get a win there against Centenary, and then later on in the day, they would go ahead and play Penn State Schuylkill here, and this would be another close one, a comeback win, if I may say here. At one point, at halftime, Penn State was looking to run away with it. They were up 13-0, and then Holy Family goes ahead and storms back, dominating the second half, shutting out both Penn State, and then scoring 15 unanswered points, 7 in the third, and then another 8 in the fourth here to go ahead and go for the win, as Holy Family notched 2 big wins here, 2 in a row now. Now, looking at the offensive side of the ball, it looks like they had to pass to get back into it. Jalissa Dales here had 5 completions over 6 attempts, 38 yards, 2 touchdowns. The 2 touchdowns went to Grace Bergmark and Morgan Sims. The Sims touchdown catch was 7 yards. Bergmark, she had 3 receptions for 12 yards in that game. Morgan Sims also passed the ball a little bit, only 3 passes for 6 attempts and 19 yards. Then on the ground, Alice Davis, 6 attempts for 38 rushing yards. Morgan Sims right behind her with 21. For Holy Family, Davis led in tackles with 6, and then they got timely interceptions from Grace Bergmark and Morgan Sims here in this game, and what ended up being an absolute thriller. For Penn State Schuylkill here, this is a tough loss for sure. Up 13 points, and then allowing 15 in the second half while not scoring is pretty tough there. But Riley Cinco led with 12 attempts for 25 yards, 153 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, but 2 picks as well here. Receiving leaders were Kaylee Morgan, 2 for 63, Nadia King, 3 for 41, and then Trinity Freeman had 1 13-yard reception. On defense, it was Kaylee Morgan who led in 4 tackles, as Holy Family started the season 0-3, went ahead and stormed back here, or at least had just a really good Saturday on the 29th, winning 2 in a row, some close ones against some of the better teams in the Atlantic East. Also, just putting it out there, it is worth saying Penn State did have a chance to potentially win the game here, but a tough turnover would not allow that, as Holy Family would go ahead and shut it out 15-13. Like I said, a good weekend for them. Now, Centenary would then play Penn State Schuylkill right after, or at least at some point in that day, and it would be a close one here. All the action happening in the first half, though. Centenary scoring 13, Penn State 6, and that would end up being your final score as Centenary wins 13-6, just getting by here. For Centenary, Eva Dodd 4 for 7, 33 yards and a pick. Jenna Magrino had 12 carries for 107 yards and 2 touchdowns here, followed by Mackenzie Amasteca, who had 8 for 61, and then Haddad had 30 rushing yards as well. Going to the defensive side of the ball, Magrino 5 tackles, an interception, and a breakup as one of their better players here, and that would lead the team. For Penn State, Riley Cinco 11 of 17, not bad from a completion percentage perspective, 170 yards, but 1 touchdown to 2 picks. That is rough there. Nadia King 2 receptions for 70 yards and a touchdown. Michaela Hill 2 for 48, and then Trinity Freeman 3 for 24, but obviously not efficient enough. And then Sierra Wisniewski led with 8 tackles. Abigail Jones had an interception, and then it looks like Nadia King had a pass breakup, but obviously not enough, and kind of what feels like a sloppy game here. Ended up with Centenary beating Penn State Schuylkill 13-6. And then finally, Sunday, March 30th, at the time of recording this game pretty much just ended here, but we got Marymount, who's at the top of the Atlantic East Conference, versus Newman, and this one was just not close at all. They would go ahead and win 39-0 here. Big first half, going up 33-0 before cruising to a win. Going ahead and looking at their stats here, Kara Vollmer, 12-15, 137 yards, 4 touchdowns, also 32 rushing yards. Those touchdowns went to Carly Rivera, who had 2, also 5 receptions for 65 yards. Kayla Barr had 3 for 43 and a touchdown, and then Samantha Bulick had an 11-yard touchdown there. On defense, Yesley Zante, I want to say, had 4 tackles. Yarliz Torres, I believe that's how you say it, had 2 interceptions, and then Samantha Bulick had an interception here as Marymount continues to play dominant football. For Newman, the struggles kind of continue here. Gia Santorello, 7 of 13 for only 25 yards and 3 picks. Lead receiver was Kayla Maish, who had 4 receptions for 15 yards, and then she also led with 4 tackles, as Marymount stays undefeated at the top of the Atlantic East with a 39-0 win over Newman. All right, now let's go ahead and talk about your Week 6 Playmaker of the Week, brought to you by Code Red Coaching. Make sure you find them at CodeRedCoaching.com or call 720-979-1914 to learn more today. That's CodeRedCoaching.com or call 720-979-1914 today. But per usual, they sponsor our Playmaker of the Week here. And, there's always a lot of players to look at, but there were some really good athletes that impressed us live, and this one found a way to get it done for her team. I believe she scored, either got a touchdown or an interception in all 4 of the games that she played this weekend that we were able to see live. And that will be Milligan's very own sophomore athlete, Sarah Rancorn, who has been absolutely tearing it out. Shout out her quarterback, Bridget Keiser, as well, who was also in consideration, played some good football this weekend too. But Sarah Rancorn, I mean, she was making plays on both sides of the ball, quickly making her case for one of the best two-way players in the entire country here, and one of the best receivers really in the country right now, as Milligan is currently sitting at a 12-2 record, with 4 of those wins happening here this weekend, and them currently on a 6-game winning streak. So there you go. There, your week 6 playmaker of the week, by the way, brought to you by Code Red Coaching, is Milligan's athlete, Sarah Rancorn. All right, now let's go ahead and get into our Week 6 NAIA rankings here. A lot of movement more on the back end of things here, but before we go into that, just as a reminder, this is how we do our rankings. Myself, Cottey, and Gino individually rank teams 1 through 22. If we rank a team at 1, they get 22 points, 2, 21, 3, 20, so on and so on. I add up all the points. Team with the most points is at the top. That's how we average that all out. So myself, Cottey, and Gino, we mostly agree. Now that we're, through a lot of the season, most of our opinions align, but there are definitely some different opinions here. So you'll hear me referring to our individual rankings and then our PMC rankings, which are our averaged ones here. So there you go. But before we go into Week 6, let's talk about Week 5 real quick here. At 22 was FMU, 21 Bethel, 20 St. Mary, 19 Reinhardt, 18 Cottey, 17 Graceland, 16 Point, 15 Siena Heights, 14 Campbellsville, 13 Southwestern, 12 Midland, 11 William Woods, 10 Milligan, 9 Life, 8 Kansas Wesleyan, 7 Weber, 6 Baker, 5 Warner, 4 St. Thomas, 3 Keiser, 2 Thomas, and that one was and still is, honestly, is Ottawa. Now, going to 22 here, we have Bethel. Gino says still no wins. Cottey says these next 2 weeks are the Threshers' best chance to not go winless this season. And I gotta agree, they got some solid opportunities coming up here. But for now, they dropped to 22 last, as other teams had more successful games here. Now at 21, dropping a spot is St. Mary. This is what Gino had to say about them. They kept it within 2 scores against Southwestern, so I'll take that as a positive, which I agree with as well. But still, though, that's I don't know. Now, this is what Cottey had to say. They competed all right against Southwestern, but this team just needs some depth and an influx of players to move up the scale more significantly. And I agree with that. I agree with what Cottey had to say here. I think against Southwestern, it just kind of shows how they stack up. And while they played them relatively close with what they have, they still have a ways to go. So they do move down a spot. Now getting into our top 20. At 20 is Reinhardt, who slides down a spot. Gino had this to say: I'm not sure that you can have a worse week than what Reinhardt just went through in Week 6. Scary stuff. They're lucky St. Mary and Bethel exist, because they'd be the last ranked team in any other scenario. Cottey had this to say: just rough weekend for Reinhardt, and I got to agree. I mean, they weren't going to ever beat Keiser, but that was a rough game for them, so there you go. Now, at 19 is Point, who is sliding down the most here, which affects the 3 teams ahead of them, all moving up because Point slides down. Point is now at 19. Gino had this to say: atrocious week for Point. That FMU loss has to sting so bad. For Cottey, he said this: I like some of the performances this team put together in the future, but struggles were to be expected this season. And I gotta agree with what Cottey has to say there. I do think there's some good talent over there. I mean, it's just a very young team. They're in year 2 right now. And I mean, a lot of those players were just recruited this year as well. So it's tough. And still, that's a team that was down 2 scores to FMU, tried to find a way to come back, just came up a score short. That's not the worst, but for that, they do still drop down quite a bit here. Now, at 18 is FMU, who is shooting up these rankings, just 4 spots here, as they do get their first NAIA win over Point. This is what Gino had to say about FMU He said, whoa, didn't expect to see the Lions up here this season, but here they are after beating Point 25-20 for their first NAIA win this season. Cottey had this to say about FMU. They beat Point, enough said. And yeah, you got to feel good about that. FMU, they also kind of played Thomas close, which I think is a good thing. And then in this game, even though it did end up being a close game at the end, they're leading by a lot, by 2 scores at half. And so this FMU team is getting better. A change at quarterback seems to really have helped them as well here. And so trending up, and that's a good thing. That's what we want to see here out of FMU. Now, moving on here, let's go ahead and go on to Cottey, who moves up a spot now at 17. Gino says this: 2 games and 2 losses this week for the comments. Not much else to add here. Cottey said, feels like a missed opportunity to not beat a team with a coach coaching their first game on short notice, but sometimes that's just how it goes here. Cottey mostly moves up a spot because Point dropped down so far. I will just say that right now. I didn't think they were going to beat William Woods here. I know they had a new head coach. Shout out Coach Holloway over there, but that's still a very talented squad regardless. So there you go. Now at 16 is Graceland, who is sliding up a spot, mostly because Point is dropping. Gino had this to say about Graceland: the Yellow Jackets didn't show much against Midland or Kansas Wesleyan, so they're going to stay outside of the top 15 for now. His top 15 at least. Cottey had this to say about Graceland: tough week for the Yellow Jackets. So there you go. Just outside our top 15, but sitting at 16 right now. Now, to start our top 15 is Siena Heights, who stays right here. Myself and Cottey got to see them live this week, so that gave us some perspective. This is what Gino had to say about Siena Heights. A very tough week. A very tough weekend in Kentucky, but I'm not going to drop Siena Heights because no one behind them deserves a spot in the rankings, which is also true, and I agree with. Cottey had this to say about Siena Heights: this program has athletes and plays that can catch your eyes, but sometimes playing out of position just to get with injuries that we came to learn about. Still, they won the games they should and pushed other more experienced teams. The tournament they host this next week will have more games that will impact the middle of the road squads, which I gotta agree with here. Siena Heights without their top 2 quarterbacks currently. They started the season without their top 2 quarterbacks, so they are going back and forth between Sophia Panico and Kaya Dunn, who, are both good athletes, but they're also both freshmen, so that's another thing with that. So that's just tough here. Dunn is an excellent athlete. Electric in open space. You have Sophia Panico, who, has shown flashes of throwing the ball pretty well here. And then I want to shout out Kiki Mercado, who is a great ball player for them as well. Just to name a few players, but they got some good players here. I think going into next year, when they have a couple more of those roles filled out, and most importantly, the depth chart fleshed out, this team will definitely be different, but we liked what we saw here. They got some good athletes here, and they'll push some teams, and that's what they did this weekend. Despite losing, right? Still pushing some teams here, so you gotta love that for Siena Heights. Now at 14 here is Southwestern, who does slide down 1 spot. Gino have this to say about Southwestern: you'd like to beat St. Mary by more than just 12 points, but a win is a win. Cottey had this to say: a closer win over USM doesn't have me convinced on this team being consistently at their best with their youth, but nonetheless, one could make noise. And yeah, it's, I don't know. I think we just feel a little bit more nervous about them because the team moved ahead. We saw them live, and they played better, I feel like, than Southwestern did this week here, which is a big reason why Southwestern's moving down, but another young team, so these things are going to fluctuate. Speaking of younger programs, at 13 we have Campbellsville, who moves up a spot. Once again, shout out them. They hosted us. They showed us great hospitality to myself and Cottey, and we really appreciate what they're able to do for us, having us out there and covering a great event that they hosted. Now, they do move up a spot, I think up to 13. This is what Gino had to say. Not having to face Milligan definitely worked in the Tigers' favor, as they won 3-1 this past weekend, with a 1-point loss to William Woods being their only blemish. Cottey had this to say about Campbellsville. When Talkington and this offense are performing at the peak of their powers, they are a top 10 unit, but consistency will always be the issue for a team young at quarterback. Still, they got a good win over Siena, and I got some quality looks from Journey Knowles during senior weekend. I know who I'd roll with heading forward, but we will just have to see how Coach Kidwell and the Tigers play it. So there you go there. Yeah, I really liked what Corinne Talkington showed them. Got a lot of the snaps here. It looks like she's kind of taken over. Journey Knowles got in there and played quite a bit as well. But, I mean, one was senior night, and then the other games were just kind of not closer games, really. And so I think you have good options there. They've both settled down into their role. I think it's just more about consistency moving forward, but really like what they have over there. I think they got a lot of talent. Shout out JC Harper, who's a great player on defense. Made a lot of plays, actually both ways. Presley Payne, one of the best in the country for a reason. And then a player that really stuck out to me as well here. I want to shout out Angie Beecher as well. She had a good weekend, I thought. Mostly good weekend. But I really wanted to shout out one of their freshmen. I think it's Alex Odom. Yeah, Alex Odom for Campbellsville. She is also a freshman, and it looks like that her and Talkington have a pretty nice connection early on here. They were slinging that thing against Siena Heights, I want to say. And, that could be something to keep an eye on moving forward. But either way, this Campbellsville team, they're a lot deeper than some teams that are older than them even. And so you got to feel good about them. I do think they're still a borderline top 10 team. They got to continue to win to move up, but they could definitely get there. So no worries about that. Now at 12 is Midland, who just stays right here. Gino said this. 33-12 win over Graceland is definitely encouraging, but I'm going to wait to rise the Warriors in the rankings until they show me a little bit more. Cottey had this to say about Midland, right about where I expect them, and yeah, me too. I mean, they lost pretty badly to Ottawa. That was really one of their few opportunities to move up in the rankings this season, and to be honest with you, I might like Campbellsville and some of these other teams over them. We'll see, though. At 11, though, still is William Woods, who doesn't move up or down. Despite having a pretty solid week, this is what Gino had to say. The Owls' 8-game win streak came to a close against Milligan, but you can't help but be impressed with the talent they have on that roster. Cottey had this to say about William Woods. The Owls had a good week where they pulled out some gritty wins with a new play caller at the helm. They showed camaraderie that is great for this young squad to have going forward, and they have great athletes to test a lot of squads with experience being their weakness, but something that they gain with every game played. So yeah, I mean, William Woods, I think this is worth throwing out there. They are the only team out of all 22 teams that is made up of only freshmen here. So myself and Cottey have been trying to make up some nicknames. Maybe y'all could give us some nicknames as well. Obviously, Fab 5 is taken, plus there's 7 starters and more players. But, this group of freshmen here, they're making it known that they're here to ball out. And they really impressed us this weekend. So there you go. There, shout out William Woods. Now at 10 is Life, who does move down a spot here. Gino had this to say about Life. You simply can't lose 62-12 to Florida Gateway and still expect to be in the top 10. You have to make that game at least somewhat close, which I agree. A good team, but still though, geez. Cottey had this to say, I'm sliding back Life after watching Milligan live this weekend and believing a rematch would go in the Buffs' favor, but Life just has to try and be consistent, and they'll have potential against a handful of squads. I'm also moving back Life for the reason Gino said, but for the same reason that Cottey said as well. I really like Milligan too, who is now sitting at 9, just a spot ahead. Let's start with Cottey and Milligan. He says absolutely massive week for the Buffaloes, who came back to beat a tough William Woods team and just shows more maturity to go hand in hand with their talent every week. Gino had this to say about Milligan. Milligan showed out this weekend in Kentucky with some clutch and dominant performances. They're definitely rolling right now as they rise to 9 in my rankings this week. And yeah, I mean, I watched Milligan this week, and I do feel better than them than some of the teams ahead of them. I think that is probably, in the next couple weeks, if they continue to win, I'm definitely going to move them up. But I just really like what they have. Got to watch them live here, and Bridget Keiser has looked extremely sharp at quarterback, has looked great. Sarah Rancorn has been having pretty much a breakout season here as one of the best wide receivers in the entire country. Ashton Weirley is going to go do her thing over there. The defense has really picked it up. Sakai Newell, Chloe Jackson, and then obviously that secondary over there as well. Caitlin Krista Quinn are playing good football. Sam Urso, super underrated at center. So this Milligan team has been looking pretty good, and they're on a pretty big win streak right now here. That confidence is only building, and once they get rolling here, they're going to be tough to stop. So just keep that in mind. Now, our top 8 is pretty much the same, but we'll still go over everyone. At 8 is Kansas Wesleyan. Gino said this: the Coyotes can relax for a bit until they play Baker, Ottawa, Midland in a 5-day span here in a couple of weeks. Cottey had this to say here about Kansas Wesleyan, and that is, won't really see another big test for them until the Baker matchup, so they'll probably chill right here at 8. Now at 7 right now is Weber. Gino have this to say about Weber. It was Weber's turn to beat up on Reinhardt this week, and they took full advantage. Cottey have this to say: encouraging dominant win over Reinhardt with the tough test that is Thomas looming, or opportunity knocking. We'll see. Which I agree with. It could be an interesting game, but we'll see what happens. At 6 still is Baker. Gino says this: Baker has he says Baker has adjusted nicely since their loss to Ottawa a couple of weeks ago. They get another shot at Ottawa next Saturday, so we'll see about that. Cottey had this to say: huge wins over some of the lesser opponents in the KCAC to build up for another shot at Ottawa and another shot at Ottawa. That is all you can hope for if you are Baker, because eventually you're going to have to beat him. Even if it's a close one and then you beat them in the postseason, that would actually be big time for them there as well. But we'll see what happens. Baker's sitting right here at 6. Now to start our top 5 once more is Warner right here. Gino had this to say about Warner. He says Warner's next chance to rise in the rankings will be against Thomas next Saturday, so that'll be fun. Cottey says this about the Royals here. He said took care of business, and that's it, and I agree. At 4 is St. Thomas here. I don't think we're really in the mood to punish them or move them up, obviously, but Gino says this: getting shut out always sucks, but only losing 2-0 has to hurt so bad for the Bobcats. I'm keeping them at 4 because they still kept Thomas very close. Cottey had this to say about St. Thomas: brutal loss that's bittersweet because you kept it close, but also you got shut out. They'll keep their spot for now. And yeah, losing is tough for them, but they challenged Thomas quite a bit here still. And they only lost by 2. And their only other loss this season is currently to Keiser, which was by a lot weeks ago, right? And so, obviously if you're St. Thomas, you wanted the win here, but you challenged them. I think there's a blueprint to winning potentially down the line, though. So there you go. Now at 3 is Keiser. Cottey have this to say about them: tough to see all the seniors who've given so much to this program and game have their senior night and realize that is the end. But a great week for the Seahawks, who retained their spot. Gino have this to say about Keiser as well: that Reinhardt game was an atrocity. Keiser can basically cruise for the rest of the regular season until the Sun Conference tournament, which, yes, agreed with here. Unfortunately, I don't think they'll have many opportunities to rise. But, sitting in a pretty good spot here. So if you're them, you definitely can't complain. Now at 2 is Thomas. Gino says a 2-0 final is absolutely crazy, but a win is a win. Plus, shutting out a team like St. Thomas is a very difficult thing to do. Cottey had this to say about them: as close of a win as you can get in as few points as possible, but a dub is a dub. Shout out Janae Scott, who, in my opinion, and this is me talking now, in my opinion, is having a MVP type season. If I had to pick, she would probably be my front runner, my potential vote for MVP right now. So just putting that out there, could be very interesting, right? So there you go. Thomas at 2, and then Ottawa is still sitting at 1 as they are like 11-0. Gino says undefeated, and then Cottey says 34-0, and that's pretty much it. Those are Week 6 rankings. Once more, it goes like this. At 22 is Bethel, 21 St. Mary, 20 Reinhardt, 19 is Point, 18 Florida Memorial, who's rising in the rankings, 17 Cottey, 16 Graceland, 15 Siena Heights, 14 Southwestern, 13 Campbellsville, 12 Midland, 11 William Woods, 10 Life, 9 Milligan, 8 Kansas Wesleyan, 7 Weber, 6 Baker, 5 Warner, 4 St. Thomas, 3 Keiser, 2 Thomas, and at number 1 right now is Ottawa. Oh, man. All right. Thank you so much for rocking with us. At the time I'm recording this, it is late Sunday night, so hopefully this episode comes out on time on Monday here. But it's been a great weekend of women's flag football, so thank you for rocking with us. If you want to check out, and you should, check out our post-game interviews and some of the highlights from the flag football frenzy down in Kentucky, make sure you check out our TikTok at Playmaker's Corner to see all of that great content. We'll be reposting that stuff slowly but surely on Instagram and hopefully on YouTube as well here. So we'll see what we can post and can't post. But a lot of good stuff from that weekend. So once again, shout out Campbellsville and all the other great teams that we were able to meet with as well. Siena Heights, Milligan, and William Woods here. Excited for their future moving forward, and excited for the rest of these teams moving forward as we are now officially in the second half of the season. But until next week, I'm Coach V, and I'll catch you later.